Chapter 1736, The Second Avatar. Chapter 1736, The Second Avatar. Immersed in the world of consciousness, engaged in combat with the remnant souls of ancient races, Lin Ming remained motionless where he was. Like this, a month passed. Through the endless slaughter, Lin Ming's face would often turn white and many times blood would seep out of his nostrils and ears. Whenever this occurred, a blue light would flash out within Lin Ming's world of consciousness, cutting all like a divine sword. This was Lin Ming's large success Blue Soul Battle Spirit. Ca. The prolonged war became increasingly fierce, increasingly brutal. A massive number of ancient remnant souls were cut down and slain by Lin Ming's Blue Soul Battle Spirit. Each ancient sovereign's resentment was sundered by Lin Ming's soul force. However, these residual resentments were extremely tenacious. Even if they were sliced in two, they could still stitch themselves back together and rush at Lin Ming. In the air, pestilent black dragons flew about, their mountain range-like bodies buffeting the heretical god tree. Branches entangled the giant black dragons, pulling them in. If it wasn't a black dragon being torn to shreds of pitch-black soul force, then it was branches and leaves being chewed up. Countless heavenly tribulation flames and heavenly tribulation thunder crashed together, annihilating enemies and dissipating. Month after month passed. Slowly, blood no longer dripped down from Lin Ming's nose and the corners of his mouth. The pure brilliance in his eyes became increasingly bright. On this day, Lin Ming suddenly roared out loud. His statue-like body emitted a thick black gas. This black gas shot out from every pore of his body, whereupon it began to disintegrate in the void. As it was destroyed, one could hear mournful grieving cries. The Demon King body in front of him, formed from resentment-filled souls, began to break down. Within Lin Ming's originally motionless pupils, flashes of purple lightning shined once more. The Blue Soul Battle Spirit that was probing the Divine Soul Avatar began to struggle again, accompanied with raging heavenly tribulation fire and endless heavenly tribulation thunder. Suddenly, an overwhelmingly monstrous hatred began to sweep out from the black fog around the Divine Soul Avatar. This hatred was like a poison dragon, breaking into Lin Ming's sea of consciousness and turning his heart cold. In this mass of chaos, a figure of black fog appeared. It shot out strands of soul force that were like snakes, attacking Lin Ming. Millimeter. This divine soul avatar also has wisdom of its own. Upon discovering this, Lin Ming's eyes shined with a cold light. He had even forcefully crushed the remnant resentment of the ancient divine sovereigns, so why would he be afraid of this little spiritual wisdom of the divine soul avatar? With a loud cry, a terrifying sword of thunder and fire shot out from his eyes, slashing through the void and slicing the enemy's soul force into countless fragments. Pa! 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 Several agonized cries echoed out from the divine soul avatar. Then, the last of its resistance vanished. Lin Ming's entire body was like a cannonball as it hurtled into the divine soul avatar. He only felt a buzzing in his mind as a dark soul force spread throughout his entire sea of consciousness. This soul force shimmered, exuding the endless pressure of a king. There were countless mystical runes left behind from ancient times. They were hidden in the pitch-black soul force, emitting an infinite strength that shocked the heart. Within his sea of consciousness, his life spirit began to create an avatar that resembled a stark naked Lin Ming. This was his life spirit avatar. As this life spirit avatar appeared, all sorts of strange and mysterious strengths gushed out from its body. This life spirit avatar rose from the ground and then rushed into the divine soul avatar, sinking into it. It was unknown how many souls of ancient kings had been used to create this divine soul avatar, but it was surely an incredible number. If Lin Ming wanted to fuse his vital soul force into it, it would undoubtedly be astronomically difficult. Outside in the real world, Lin Ming fell into a petrified state once more. Every pore of his body began shooting out arcs of black light. Within his pupils, billions upon billions of ancient runes appeared, gathering and dissipating, gradually spreading throughout his entire body from his flesh to his bones to even his divine soul. This process continued for an unknown length of time. Slowly, Lin Ming opened his eyes. Where his pupils had been, two pitch-black vortexes swirled, revolving with soul force. Majestic black light burst out from every inch of his body, winding about his body like wandering dragons. In the space before him, the black lights gathered until finally all of the black light had flowed out from his body. Slowly, someone appeared in front of Lin Ming. This figure's body was as black as ink and their smile and face were exactly the same as Lin Ming's. However, this pitch-black Lin Ming's face was dim and blurry like the rippling surface of a lake. It wasn't a clear sight. As this black Lin Ming raised his hands, dense substantialized soul force rose about him. Mystical power surged out from his body. The body of this black Lin Ming actually exuded a dense evil aura. Lin Ming's first avatar was the Essence Spirit Embryo Stone. Its blood vitality had been vigorous and potent, like an unrivaled war god. But this second avatar was the Soul Spring's Divine Embryo. Its body billowed with demonic energy like an ancient fierce demon. Its eyes were as dark as the abyss, seeming to absorb all light reflected within them. If a martial artist with insufficient cultivation were to look into the eyes of this Soul Spring's Divine Embryo, they would feel their soul fall into illusion, as if they were trapped in an endless abyss. "I've finally succeeded." Lin Ming let out a long breath. By dividing a part of his life spirit as the foundation, absorbing the soul force left behind by the ancient kings, as well as using the imprisoning array formation left behind by the Azura Roadmaster, he had been able to form his divine soul avatar. Because his life spirit essence was left within the divine soul avatar, Lin Ming could clearly feel that the divine soul avatar's strength was as deep and vast as the sea. It was a truly formidable force. With a thought, the divine soul avatar divided again and again. From 1 to 2, from 2 to 4, finally, 16 black Lin Mings appeared, all of them exactly alike. The divine soul avatar had no true substantial body, so it was possible for Lin Ming to have it split apart. However, each copy only had a 16th of the original's power. Lin Ming was overjoyed. As long as this divine soul avatar existed, even if his own life spirit had received heavy damage, he could still absorb the power of his divine soul avatar to rapidly regenerate. In battle, when facing the spiriters, this would be a tremendously useful ability. It had to be known that generally speaking, one's soul force was far more difficult to restore than the physical body. When one's body was harmed, as long as their source essence wasn't damaged, then they could rapidly recover. But if one were to lose their soul force, they could only practice a cultivation method like the one that Empyrean Divine Mist left behind and slowly recover. Now, he had this divine soul avatar that possessed such exuberant soul force. In the future, he could even gradually expand the divine soul avatar's strength. In theory, the more powerful the divine soul avatar was, the more times it could divide itself. With another thought, all of these divine soul avatars rushed into Lin Ming's body. Puff! As these divine soul avatars shot towards him, one of them held a halberd filled with the aura of an ancient king, boundless like a dragon, as it leapt back into Lin Ming. This caused Lin Ming to pale, his body slightly shivering. Although there was some pain, he still had a happy expression on his face. Just now, he had used this divine soul avatar as a weapon to attack his own soul. He wanted to test the striking power of the divine soul avatar, and the results had left him pleasantly surprised. His soul force was already powerful, but this divine soul avatar was still able to pierce through his defenses. Even so, because their souls originated from the same source, there were no true injuries. In the attack just now, Lin Ming could faintly feel that there were still some anomalies left in the divine soul avatar. A tiny portion of the ancient sovereign's remnant souls remained within. It would take some time to completely refine them. In order to thoroughly take hold of this divine soul avatar, it would require time to completely fuse with it. After obtaining the divine soul avatar, the black fog of soul force in the ancient bronze coffin began to dissipate. All around, the entire world fell into a deathly silence. Lin Ming wasn't in a hurry to leave. His eyes fell onto the mountain-like ancient bronze book before him. Sheng Mai said that this final trial would last for several years. Sometimes, it would be normal for someone to be stranded in a level. However, in 5 years, the final trial's exit would open and all trial challengers would be forcefully cast out. This Azura Sutra Volume 2 is vast and incomprehensible, filled with an endless variation of subtle mysteries. Since I cannot bring this out and there is still some time until the 5-year deadline to leave the final trial, I might as well stay here to further comprehend the Azura Sutra. This is my great lucky chance. I must understand as much as possible since I won't have another chance to look once I leave. Feeling the boundless aura exuding from the ancient bronze book, Lin Ming was filled with regret. He couldn't bring the Azura Sutra out with him, and thus the amount he could learn was limited. When it came to the Azura Sutra that was the Azura Roadmaster's inheritance, he didn't dare to slack at all. Chapter 1737, 3 years. Chapter 1737, 3 years. Lin Ming had already decided his plans. Until the time within the final trial came to an end, he would stay in the 6th level and study the Azura Sutra. In any case, this was the 6th level reward space. No matter who was at the 6th level, they would have their own lucky chance. Lin Ming wouldn't be able to find Xiao Moxian for some time, nor was he worried for her because the 6th level simply didn't have any dangers. As for the 7th level, if he couldn't go there, then it was definitely impossible for others. Lin Ming focused all of his attention on the ancient bronze book. As his thoughts moved, his entire being floated up until he was a mere 10 feet away from the bronze book. He could feel the powerful soul aura emanating from the words. As his mind was immersed in the Azura Sutra, Lin Ming could feel the words filled with a thick demonic energy rush towards him, as if each word was an imposing demon god. Seemingly because he had refined his second avatar, when Lin Ming looked through the ancient bronze book again, he seemed to have even more insights into it. Within his sea of consciousness, the world shook as if giant demon gods had appeared. The skies roiled as all sorts of mystical runes formed law lines around these illusory demon gods. Then, giant golden swords appeared, slicing through the demonic energy that rolled off of these demon phantoms. Like this, Lin Ming floated in front of the ancient bronze book. Every time he looked at a word, he would have to suppress the soul force emanating from it, and then carefully ponder the endless true meanings contained within. Years passed without sense of time. On the words of the ancient bronze book, every divine soul aura was gradually suppressed by Lin Ming. Each pitch-black character formed a star that floated high above his sea of consciousness. In the end, the soul force that shimmered above the ancient bronze book turned gloomy. The entire Azura Sutra second volume appeared in Lin Ming's sea of consciousness. This second volume spoke about cultivating one's soul force. Compared to the soul force cultivation method passed down by Empyrean divine mist, it contained far more unique and incomprehensible mysteries. Lin Ming had already assiduously cultivated the first volume of the Azura Sutra and had formed a foundation through doing so. Now, it was twice as easy for him to cultivate the second volume while spending half the effort. The true meaning of every word, every rune's law lines, all of them danced in the air, allowing him to gradually comprehend the essence of their mysteries. Slowly, every mysterious word of the Azura Sutra Volume 2 dazzled with strange soul force as they slowly danced around Lin Ming. Lin Ming's mind was immersed within the boundless text. He simply didn't feel the passing of time. At the same time, at another space within the 6th level, a pitch-black flame lotus bloomed. The flame lotus was 1,000 feet wide and long and shot blazing conflagrations straight into the skies. All of the space within 100 miles was filled with a vast destructive fire energy. And in the center of the black lotus, Xiao Moxian's entire body floated naked. Her black hair cascaded down her body like an inky waterfall, gently covering her perfect figure. In the space between her eyebrows, there was a little flame spirit that seemed as if it was melting the void around it. This little flame spirit was breaking down as it constantly fused into Xiao Moxian's body. The little flame spirit was the undying inferno's spirit. Just how terrifying was the undying inferno? Even this tiny piece of its spirit cost Xiao Moxian over a year of time before she was able to adapt to it and start swallowing it. As this life spirit fused into Xiao Moxian's body, runes that represented the source of fire began to appear over her skin like curse seals. Slowly, her entire body started to project beams of pitch-black light. Rippling feathers containing the aura of the great Tao began to drill out from her body. These black feathers shined with mystical fire runes. They began to wrap around Xiao Moxian as she slowly absorbed the undying inferno's life spirit. Over time, a dark and massive egg appeared in the void, exuding a vast power of fire. Xiao Moxian was infinitely close to her third nirvana. There was a long road separating the second and third nirvana. Of course, because she had just completed her second nirvana not too long ago, it would be impossible to finish everything at once without accumulating over time. Before her third nirvana, she had to draw support from the great Tao laws of a phoenix's nirvana, and then fuse together the undying inferno's life spirit with her own, concentrating them together. Then, through unending struggle, she could comprehensively master the power of fire and allow it all to become a part of herself. Meanwhile, at another space in the 6th level, a similar event was occurring. However, as opposed to the incandescent sea of fire that Xiao Moxian was bathing in this space the entire earth had been frozen to the hardest of extremes for 1,000 miles. Soul Empress Sheng Mai was also naked, her entire body wrapped in deep blue freezing ice. Her exquisite body was curled up like a baby, her arms wrapped around her knees and her 2 eyes shut tight. Because of the refraction of light, it was impossible to see her sublime curves through the ice. Vast waves of the power of ice, sparkling source ice laws, all of it gathered around Sheng Mai's body in flowing waves. Between Sheng Mai's eyebrows, a tiny ice phoenix mark appeared, shining with the most source power of ice, echoing and resonating with Sheng Mai's body. This ice phoenix mark was the remaining spirit mark left over after Sheng Mai completely refined the spirit of the undying polar ice. Tiny rivulets of black blood essence emitted from Sheng Mai's snow-white skin, emanating a terrifying power as if a star was dissipating. As it dissipated, even space itself seemed to be squeezed and shattered by the massive force. At this moment, Sheng Mai was reaching perfection of her 6th reincarnation. When she entered the 6th level, she already had massive accumulations and an unfathomable background. Now, with the spirit of the undying polar ice that Lin Ming had given her, this gave her even more confidence to reach perfection of her 6th reincarnation. Thus, in this incomparably safe 6th level, Sheng Mai had chosen to push herself to perfection of the 6th revolution, enhancing her bodily strength and soul force to the peak of the 6th reincarnation. As long as she completed all of this, she could finally begin to wholeheartedly prepare for the 7th reincarnation. In the grand reincarnation art, the 7th, 8th, and 9th revolutions were the most difficult. Even Sheng Mai still lacked the confidence to face the last 3 revolutions. She didn't fear that she couldn't complete the last 3 reincarnations, but was afraid that her accumulations would be lacking, leading to her reincarnations not reaching perfection. If this happened, it would have a permanent negative influence on her road of martial arts and place a limit on her future achievements. But, with the undying polar ice's spirit, this gave Sheng Mai far more confidence. Without the 3 Emperor Jades, no one could open the final trial's 7th level. The 7th level was also likely the final level. When Fanny Fafa and the others entered the space of the 6th level, they all tried to find a passage to the 7th level. But, all of them failed. Thus, unanimously, they all decided to stay in the 6th level and digest the massive harvests they had gained. However, compared to Lin Ming, Xiao Moxian, and Sheng Mai, their harvests were far less. A completion percentage of the early 70s was simply far too different from the high 80s and low 90s. What Fanny Fafa, Mo Bright Moon, and the others obtained were all cultivation methods of the laws of the 33 heavens that perfectly suited them. Time passed and the 3rd year arrived. It was nearly time for the end of the final trial. Lin Ming floated in front of the ancient bronze book, deep in meditation. The pitch-black soul force around him had become increasingly light and blurry. Within his mind, the words of the Asura Sutra 2nd volume shimmered like black stars. The Asura Sutra was the condensed essence of martial arts that the Asura Roadmaster had gained throughout his lifetime, and thus filled with infinite secrets. Although Lin Ming had read and comprehended as much as he could, all he understood was an extremely tiny part. He wasn't able to understand the majority. He would need time to slowly and thoroughly study it. However, the parts of the Asura Sutra that he didn't understand were all forcefully recorded in his sea of consciousness with soul force. He wouldn't forget them. When the last word of the Asura Sutra Volume 2 was recorded in his mind, Lin Ming slowly opened his eyes. With a light flick of his sleeves, black light rippled out from him. At this time, Lin Ming's eyes appeared exceptionally bright. It seems, it's almost time to leave. Lin Ming realized. After wholeheartedly cultivating the Asura Sutra Volume 2 for over 2 years, he slowly discovered that it was much easier for him to understand the Azura heavenly Tao laws within the final trial, as if everything was in perfect harmony with himself. He could faintly feel that this space was emitting a mystic strength that was repelling him. Once this mystic strength gathered to a certain point, it would directly teleport him out. In other words, the time at which the final trial ended was rapidly approaching. Chapter 1738, The Final Reward. Chapter 1738, The Final Reward. As time passed, Lin Ming could feel the repelling force of the Azura heavenly Tao become increasingly intense. At the rate this force was accumulating, Lin Ming guessed he would be transmitted out from the final trial in around a day. I wonder how Xiana and Mo Brightmoon are doing, Lin Ming couldn't help but wonder. In the 6th level, everyone would have their own respective lucky chances. He had no idea what Xiao Moxian had obtained here or how much her strength increased. As the power of space was brewing and the exit of the final trial was about to open, Lin Ming saw that in front of the ancient bronze book, countless law lines gathered, gradually forming into a square array diagram. This square array diagram was similar to the myriad demon karmic wheel, but there were many other things included. Within it shimmered countless magnificent and phantasmal lines and numerous ice crystals. Although these lines seemed dense and incomparably complicated, Lin Ming could make out many clues from just a single glance. His heart began to beat faster. These lines were similar to the Azura heavenly Tao law lines that appeared when drawing up a divine runic symbol. Looking more carefully, the astonishment in Lin Ming's eyes became increasingly bright. This array diagram is not just the myriad demon karmic wheel, but an array diagram formed from the union of all 3 volumes of the Azura Sutra. Moreover, these beautiful lines are similar to those that appear when I'm drawing up a divine runic symbol. If he were only a divine runic master, then he might be confused about seeing these crystalline lines. After all, these lines seemed extremely messy, and besides seeing some enchanting figures, everything else looked strange. But Lin Ming's grasp of the Azura heavenly Tao laws had reached an unbelievable degree. He quickly looked at these chaotic crystalline lines and was able to dismantle the infinitely powerful divine runic symbol refinement process. With how each line overlapped and crossed, they were able to produce trillions and trillions of geometric changes. Besides being materials that hadn't been refined into divine runic symbols, the divine runic symbol refinement lines recorded on these ice crystals could be called perfect. These ice crystals must be divine runic symbol wisdom in crystallized form that the Azura Road Master personally refined in the past. Realizing this, an ancient voice suddenly sounded out in Lin Ming's mind. 10 of 9, the peak of numbers, may inherit the Azura heavenly array diagram. This array diagram is formed from the 3 forces of Grand Mist energy, Genesis energy, and Spirit source. Take the Azura heavenly array diagram and fuse it into the flesh and blood, growing a microcosm of the Azura Road within the body. Sunder the great Tao of the 33 heavens and wander through the 33 heavens with the Azura heavenly Tao laws unhindered. As this information flowed into Lin Ming's mind, he was immediately overjoyed. He suddenly recalled that after someone was able to obtain the approval of the final trial, the most important reward a trial challenger could obtain was the ability to bring the Azura heavenly Tao laws back with them to the 33 heavens. If this Azura heavenly array diagram was buried within the body, it was the same as having a mini Azura road world within oneself. He would be able to use the power of the Azura heavenly Tao laws, and even the many laws within divine runic symbols could be used in the 33 heavens. The divine runic arts were different from the inscription technique of the 33 heavens. The difference lay in the fusion of the Azura heavenly Tao laws and God runes within the inscription symbol itself. The reason that the divine runic arts were useless outside of the Azura road world was because the 33 heavens great Tao pushed back and repelled the Azura heavenly Tao laws. Generally speaking, a martial artist wouldn't have the incalculably mighty ability of the Azura Road Master to defy the will of the heavens and establish their own heavenly Tao. Thus, they couldn't use the Azura laws. But with this Azura heavenly array diagram, Lin Ming had no need to fear the 33 heavens great Tao. Realizing this, Lin Ming no longer hesitated. His body flashed as he rushed into the center of the Azura heavenly array diagram. The moment that Lin Ming rushed in, the endless runes of the array formation swept towards him like a whirlpool, sinking into his body and rapidly shrinking within him until they completely fused into his body and blood essence. The array diagram was formed from highly compacted source strengths of essence, energy, and divine. The impact of this fusion was astonishing. It was like countless stars were breaking into his body. Even though Lin Ming's body had been tempered to an incredible degree, it still caused his blood vitality to tumble and seethe. 2 hours later, Lin Ming had slowly absorbed all of the laws. Within his inner world, the Azura heavenly array diagram had formed, slowly revolving. Whirl. Runes emitted the mystic source strength of a universe, flooding Lin Ming's inner world. Because of this, even the boundaries of his inner world began to develop and expand outwards. In that moment, Lin Ming felt his cultivation come infinitely close to reaching the Holy Lord realm. As long as he wanted to, he could break through at any time. And at this moment, the complete Azura heavenly array diagram took root in Lin Ming's body, completely integrating with his flesh and blood, becoming a part of him. The vast power of the Azura Dao laws within the final trial surged up, roaring out into the outer world. Inner Azura Road, Azura Sea. In the broad Azura Sea, waves crashed up in smoky clouds, limitless and without end. Some people had once tried to find the end of the Azura Sea, but even if they rode top-quality spirit ships and sped to the depths of the Azura Sea, they still weren't able to find its limits. As for trying to use great void shifts to traverse long distances, this sort of travel would cause one to be easily lost in the chaotic fluctuations of space and time, unable to find the exit afterwards. It was like the Azura Sea itself represented the end of the Azura Road world. And this end blurred in with the chaotic power of space. The space here was perilous and filled with cruel dangers. There was no one able to truly arrive at its end. Not only was the Azura Sea infinitely broad, it was also unfathomably deep. Even a star could be submerged within its great waters. Beneath the surface, ancient sea beasts lived, approaching colossal, incomprehensibly large sizes. Among these sea beasts, there were even many god-beast level existences. Although it was said that there were many buried treasures hidden in the Azura Sea, because the water was too deep and there were too many dangers, it was nearly impossible to find them. One would only find life-threatening emergencies. Thus, very few people came to the Azura Sea. But on this day, deep in the Azura Sea, there were over 100,000 people gathered. These people were all outstanding individuals from different influences. There were senior supreme elders and also extraordinary young elites. All of them floated above the sea waters with overwhelming momentum, many of them riding opulent spirit boats and spirit ships. This scene was truly magnificent. The reason for this was that recently in the skies above the Azura Sea, space storms constantly flashed as if there was something horrifying brewing there. And according to previous experiences, this meant that the exit to the Azura Road's final trial was about to open at last. The final trial that had gone on for several years was finally coming to an end. To the many influences of the Azura Road, this was an incredibly significant event. If there were influences who had sent disciples to attend the final trial, there was no need to mention just how important the opening of the final trial's exit was to them. Even influences who hadn't sent any disciples to participate still came to the Azura Sea to see what outcomes others had. They all wanted to see what the completion percentage of other geniuses from large influences were like. This completion percentage would reflect to a great degree the future achievements that martial artist would be able to reach. If there was a sect who had a trial challenger that reached 77 to 78%, this would meant that in the future they would reach the half-step Empyrean realm, and there was even a considerable chance they would become an Empyrea. The birth of an Empyrean. In an Empyrean level influence, there was no need to mention how important this was. They would unhesitatingly spend every resource possible to chase after such a goal. In truth, the birth of an Empyrean was an event worth great celebration even in a true divinity-level influence, one for which heroes from all over the world would be invited. For instance, the Divine Void Divine Kingdom. If one ignored Soul Emperor Divine Void, then Divine Void Divine Kingdom only had 7 Empyreans. So, any influence that could produce a trial challenger with 77 to 78% completion would absolutely draw enormous attention. As for a completion percentage of 79, that was even more exaggerated. Such a character had an extremely high possibility of becoming an Empyrean and perhaps even a powerhouse amongst Empyreans. A step higher than that was 80% completion. That was a mythical score. Although there was only a single percent between 80% and 79%, the truth was that it was as far as the heavens and earth. In the last 100 million years, there were several such people who had appeared with this score, and nearly all of them had become Empyreans, with many close to becoming true divinities. However, there were no influences that dared to hope for this completion percentage. In this round of the final trial, only Sheng Mai had a chance to uphold this legend. But Sheng Mai was someone from the 33 heavens and had nothing to do with the Azura Road. In the Azura Sea, the various great influences set themselves up according to their strengths. There were dozens of large and small sea platforms. The central platforms, the seats of honor, naturally belonged to those of Divine Void Divine Kingdom and Heaven Union Divine Kingdom. At this time, whether it was Divine Void Divine Kingdom or Heaven Union Divine Kingdom, they both had core disciples attending the final trial. The Divine Void Divine Kingdom's third Crown Prince and Heaven Union Divine Kingdom's Big Flame had both entered, and they were destined to be the most brilliant and dazzling characters of the final trial. They had also made a bet beforehand, causing everyone to anticipate their confrontation even more. In a sense, the results of the final trial were also a competition between the futures of the Heaven Union Divine Kingdom and Divine Void Divine Kingdom. Both sides had attached great importance to the final trial. The group leader of Heaven Union Divine Kingdom's team here was a direct disciple of Divine Emperor Heaven Union, High Prince Whitefeather, a half-step Empyrean. As for the Divine Void Divine Kingdom's side, their team was led by the third Imperial Scholar of the Divine Void Divine Kingdom, Imperial Scholar Sunday. He was also a half-step Empyrean. The two platforms that these two great influences stood upon were less than 200 feet apart. As they glared at each other from across the sea, they both stood in sharp opposition. High Prince Whitefeather comfortably reclined on his Kirene throne, a smile dangling on his face. To one side, a beautiful maid was holding up a screen for him, and on his other side, another beautiful maid was hand-feeding him rare and precious spirit fruits. This sort of pose was similar to that of an emperor of the mortal world enjoying himself. He looked extremely relaxed. High Prince Whitefeather also had a look of confidence. He looked at Imperial Scholar Sun, who had a table next to him with a jar of celebratory wine. He smiled and said, "Imperial Scholar Sun, you even have the celebratory wine prepared. It seems you've prepared it for the third Crown Prince." Imperial Scholar Sun seems to have already assumed that the third Crown Prince will return in glory, but it seems you prepared the festivities too early. You might need to be careful of accidentally slapping yourself. High Prince Whitefeather taunted. Heaven Union Divine Kingdom and Divine Void Divine Kingdom were both respective leaders of the saints and spiriters in the Azura Road. They were both hostile to each other to begin with, and now that they were sitting near each other, it was normal for them to engage in verbal battles in their boredom. Chapter 1739, The Exit Opens. Chapter 1739, The Exit Opens. Facing High Prince Whitefeather's taunting words, Imperial Scholar Sun cackled. His fingers rhythmically tapped on the armrest as he leisurely said, "There is no need to speak so arrogantly, otherwise the one who will have to leave from shame might be you." Whether it was Heaven Union Divine Kingdom's Big Flame or Divine Void Divine Kingdom's third Crown Prince, both were amongst the most outstanding young disciples of their generation. In the future, it was likely they would become Empyreans. In this final trial, except for the anomaly known as Sheng Mai, everything was theirs for the taking. Whether it was High Prince Whitefeather or Imperial Scholar Sun, they both had absolute confidence in their influence's disciples. Ha ha ha. High Prince Whitefeather laughed. Very good. Then, let us take a good look at whether the third Crown Prince or Big Flame has a higher completion percentage. However, I only fear that your joy will turn to sorrow. If there is anything that might have happened to your precious disciples, hey, that is what I am cautioning you about. Since ancient times, it has been common for peak disciples to perish in the final trial. If Nephew Big Flame were to recklessly try to show off his power and have some accident befall him, that would truly be regretful. The barbs between Imperial Scholar Sun and High Prince Whitefeather became increasingly cruel and sinister. At this time, winds and clouds began to surge. The power of space rapidly converged above the sea. The final trial's exit was about to open. Everyone's minds tightened. The originally boisterous scene suddenly quieted down. Everyone waited in complete concentration for the exit path to open. In the final trial, the truth was that there was more than one exit path. Besides the largest one, there were many small exits, and the trial challengers would be transmitted to random locations. It wasn't necessarily true they would be transported out to this location. Thus, many people had already prepared sound-transmitting talismans and signal flares to call out to their disciples as soon as possible. As everyone was preparing to receive and greet their disciples, at this time, monstrous waves formed atop the sea. From the distant horizon, a majestic golden mountain came flying towards them, bursting out with flashes of golden brilliance. This divine mountain had just appeared on the horizon, but in the blink of an eye it had arrived in front of everyone, as if it had appeared out of thin air. This mountain was incredibly high, and the peak was buried deep in the clouds, unable to be seen. Wherever the mountain went, gargantuan waves would rise up and the earth would quake. Boundless Divine Mountain, Soul Emperor Divine Void's personal transportation. Just the appearance of Boundless Divine Mountain wasn't worthy of surprise. This was because Soul Emperor Divine Void didn't necessarily need to be on Boundless Divine Mountain. Many times it was used as a spirit ship. But what shocked everyone was that there was a faintly terrifying pressure emitting from Boundless Divine Mountain, as if there were a spiritual god at the summit of this divine mountain. This sort of pressure made one feel awe from the depths of their heart. It even caused their soul to shiver. From such a great distance atop the divine mountain, this existence could actually cause the 100,000+ people to have their minds quake in fear, and even cause world kings to tremble. This was a pressure that only a true divinity could possess. How can this be? Soul Emperor Divine Void, he came here personally. This is only a trial for juniors, it shouldn't be enough to alarm him. Just what sort of status did Soul Emperor Divine Void have? No matter how significant the final trial was, Soul Emperor Divine Void still wouldn't come to greet the disciples. In ordinary times, only a half-step Empyrean would be sent out to manage these matters. But the current situation was different, and that was because Soul Empress Sheng Mai was also participating in the final trial. Her status almost stood on par with Soul Emperor Divine Void's. And, the most important factor was that Sheng Mai was a woman who Soul Emperor Divine Void admired from the depths of his heart. Sheng Mai had already been in the final trial for several years. Moreover, this final trial was extremely important to Sheng Mai and concerned whether or not her sixth reincarnation would be able to reach perfection. This was why Soul Emperor Divine Void personally came out to greet her. The appearance of Soul Emperor Divine Void caused all the martial artists present to hold their breath. No one dared to needlessly speak, they simply quietly waited for the exit paths of the final trial to open. As for Boundless Divine Mountain, it remained peacefully floating above everyone's heads, waiting for the exit to open. A few hours passed. Slowly, dusty pink clouds rose like smoke, condensing in the skies above the Azure Sea. Multicolored heaven and earth origin energy gathered from all directions, condensing into a thick mist that was incomparably gorgeous. Kai kai kai. In this mist, thunder and fire sparked. The wild waves became increasingly turbulent. At this moment, a 1,000-mile-long vortex began to form. As this vortex appeared, the surrounding heaven and earth origin energy became increasingly violent. A massive space gate appeared, like the maw of a giant beast that was ready to swallow the world. The final trial that had lasted for over 3 years had finally ended. The appearance of the space gate also meant that the trial challengers would be transmitted outside soon. We can finally find out the result. I wonder how many trial challengers perished this time, and what are the results of the survivors. It's certain that Sheng Mai will be number 1, but I don't know if she managed to create a new record or not. And, we need to find out whether the Divine Void Crown Prince or Big Flame did better. Everyone began to wildly discuss. Even Divine Rune City's Old Shuai and Old Su were mixed up in the crowd. In their old age, the chances of making another breakthrough were slim to none. Thus, they spent their days idly enjoying themselves. If they weren't out taking strolls, then they were setting up their stalls. As for such a grand occasion as this, they certainly wouldn't miss out on it. Moreover, there was a junior that they were paying particular attention to. That was Lin Ming. I wonder how that brat Lin Ming did. I really cannot understand him. In the last several years he's given me many pleasant surprises in the divine runic arts for my eyes to enjoy, and now all of a sudden he became a talented martial artist. I have no idea when he managed to collect the necessary sets of god runes to earn the qualifications to enter the final trial. Let's wait and take a look. Although I've never seen this boy fight before, he's always managed to surprise me. In terms of combat, he should definitely have some talent. I don't think his results will be bad. As Old Su and Old Shui were speaking, a trial challenger had already appeared from the portal. He appeared several hundred miles away from the group, but to these martial artists this distance wasn't anything at all. He was soon received by the people from his sect. As he appeared, more and more disciples were transmitted out. They were all transmitted in a scope of tens of thousands of miles in the Azure Sea. Every sect used their own unique sound-transmitting talismans to call out to their disciples. What's your completion percentage? How far did you go? What rewards did you obtain? As the trial challengers returned to the welcome embrace of their sects, they were rapidly peppered with questions. Trial challengers with a high completion percentage naturally replied with pride. As for those with a low completion percentage, they hung their heads and answered in shame. Many of them had poor results and had withdrawn from the final trial midway, forced to wait the 3 years until they were transmitted out of the final trial. Seeing the trial challengers all emerge in droves, Heaven Union Divine Kingdom's High Prince White Feather had a confident expression on at all times. His maid stood by his side, feeding him a peeled spirit fruit. At this time, from beside High Prince White Feather, a disciple suddenly said, "High Prince, Your Highness, some of our disciples have returned." Oh! High Prince White Feather's eyes brightened. Focusing his eyes, he could see that on the distant horizon there were 5 disciples rapidly flying towards him. They all wore star crowns and had similar sect clothing on. They were disciples of Heaven Union Divine Kingdom. As the disciples of Heaven Union Divine Kingdom appeared, they immediately attracted the attention of many people. Out of all the influences present, Heaven Union Divine Kingdom was one of the leads. It was impossible not to notice them. They all wanted to take a look and see what the results of the chosen prides of heaven from Heaven Union Divine Kingdom were like. High Prince White Feather stood up. He glanced at Imperial Scholar Sun with a hint of mocking superiority. Then, he turned to the arriving disciples of Heaven Union Divine Kingdom and welcomingly laughed. "Good. Very good. In this final trial, you have all returned with merits. When you return to the sect in the future, you will definitely be vigorously cultivated. Your futures will be wonderful." High Prince White Feather boisterously praised. As he spoke, the 5 disciples gulped, as if they were afraid of something. High Prince White Feather noticed this but didn't care much. He was only speaking polite words just now. In truth, he didn't care about the results of these disciples at all, he only cared for Big Flame. "Big Flame? How come he isn't with you all?" As High Prince White Feather asked this question, the ears of many nearby martial artists pricked up. As Imperial Scholar Sun heard this, he also carefully listened even as he continued rapping his fingers. He similarly cared about Big Flame's completion percentage. However, the complexions of the 5 disciples had turned ugly. "Millimeter? What is it?" High Prince White Feather frowned. "Senior Apprentice Brother Big Flame, he hasn't come out yet?" These disciples asked with fear in their voices. They looked in all directions, holding on to some hope that Big Flame was here. However, even as more and more trial challengers arrived, they didn't discover Big Flame's shadow at all. The response of these disciples caused High Prince White Feather's face to darken. "What are you all hesitating for? If there's something to say, then spit it out." The disciples awkwardly looked at each other and then said, "Reporting to Your Highness the High Prince, this disciple didn't see Senior Apprentice Brother Big Flame in the 4th level. Even when the channel to the 5th level opened, Senior Apprentice Brother Big Flame still didn't appear and we didn't see him afterwards either. We thought that perhaps Senior Apprentice Brother Big Flame was stranded somewhere on the 4th level, and when the final trial ended, he would be transmitted out. The disciples said, their voices weak and quivering. In truth, there was something that they didn't say, and it was that in such a situation, the logical conclusion was that Big Flame had died in the final trial. What did you say? As High Prince Whitefeather heard this, he was immediately shocked. Big Flame disappeared in the 4th level? If he didn't come out even now, then it was likely something had happened to him. How could this be possible? And at this time, Imperial Scholar Sun began to wildly cackle. Unfortunate, unfortunate, far too unfortunate. I wonder what sort of accident befell Apprentice Nephew Big Flame? If he went missing in the 4th level and still hasn't come out, then wouldn't his fate likely have been more unfortunate than fortunate? Imperial Scholar Sun loudly and openly said, pouring as much salt as he could on High Prince Whitefeather's wounds. But seeing Imperial Scholar Sun's appearance, the several Heaven Union Divine Kingdom disciples glanced at each other, a strange look on their faces. They suddenly said, Senior is from Divine Void Divine Kingdom? Your 3rd Crown Prince also went missing with Senior Apprentice Brother Big Flame. Has he come out yet? This sudden question caused Imperial Scholar Sun's face to stiffen. His expression immediately became quite wonderful indeed. Chapter 1740, Legend. Chapter 1740, Legend. What did you say? Imperial Scholar Sun's eyes widened as he glowered at the disciples of Heaven Union Divine Kingdom. I said that the Divine Void 3rd Crown Prince has also gone missing, and neither he nor our Senior Apprentice Brother Big Flame have been seen since the 4th level. From Senior's response, it seems that the 3rd Crown Prince hasn't appeared yet. If so, then, his fate is likely no better. A Heaven Union Divine Kingdom disciple said. But his words had touched upon Imperial Scholar Sun's reverse scale. Imperial Scholar Sun hissed, stop speaking nonsense. Although his words were rough, a strong sense of unease had appeared in his mind. Even though the disciples of Heaven Union Divine Kingdom were hostile towards the Divine Void Divine Kingdom, he didn't think that they would speak recklessly about such things, because these types of matters were too easily seen through. If they were to speak lies, then their words would eventually come back to haunt them. The several disciples of Heaven Union Divine Kingdom had believe it or not expressions on their faces and didn't argue back. At this time, someone standing near Imperial Scholar Sun said, Lord Imperial Scholar, Senior Apprentice Brother Yang has returned. Just as this voice spoke out, Imperial Scholar Sun grabbed onto it like a life-saving thread. He quickly turned and saw 5 people flying towards them from the far-off horizon. These people were the trial challengers that Divine Void Divine Kingdom had sent out. One of them was the one referred to as Senior Apprentice Brother Yang. The first thing Imperial Scholar Sun did was try to search for the 3rd Crown Prince amongst the group. However, he didn't see him. This caused his heart to turn as cold as ice. Where is the 3rd Crown Prince? He didn't wait for the Divine Void disciples to steady themselves before he aggressively approached them and asked, The Crown Prince, he. After having Imperial Scholar Sun ask them this question right to their faces, the several disciples were dazed for a moment, not knowing how to respond. Where did he go? Imperial Scholar Sun was breathless. Right now he didn't care about the 3rd Crown Prince's completion percentage, he just wanted to see the live person. Well, the several Divine Void Divine Kingdom disciples looked at each other in dismay. Finally, Senior Apprentice Brother Yang said with fear in his voice, reporting to the Imperial Scholar, His Highness the Crown Prince, as well as Duke Fullmoon, disappeared on the 4th level and their whereabouts are unknown. We tried looking for them, but, afterwards, there was a giant staircase of 33 steps leading from the 4th level to the 5th level, and after I climbed to the 31st step I entered the 5th level, and after that I didn't see the Crown Prince. The Senior Apprentice Brother Yang was one of those people who had followed Lin Ming and the others to 5th level and helped confront of the undying inferno. But he was also one of those that were afraid of the undying polar ice that appeared afterwards and left the group at a critical moment. His missing. Imperial Scholar Sun mumbled to himself. He fell back into his wooden chair, a stunned expression on his face. The Divine Void 3rd Crown Prince was of their Sun family bloodline and was also the most outstanding disciple from their family. Because of this reason, Imperial Scholar Sun had been chosen to lead the delegation to greet the third Crown Prince. But now, he discovered that the Crown Prince was missing and had likely suffered some fatal accident. This information was naturally a great attack to him. For a time, Imperial Scholar Sun had no interest at all in bickering with High Prince Whitefeather. At the same time, High Prince Whitefeather had no intention of kicking Imperial Scholar Sun while he was down. Right now, they could be called fellow sufferers grieving together. Because Big Flame was missing, he too had fallen into despondency. Originally, the Divine Void Divine Kingdom and Heaven Union Divine Kingdom were the stars of the final trial. With their overly dramatic and tragic end, this caused more and more martial artists to notice them. Everyone now realized that two of the most outstanding disciples from Divine Void Divine Kingdom and Heaven Union Divine Kingdom, Big Flame and the third Crown Prince, had gone missing in the final trial and had likely suffered some tragic end. The two of them had been the main leads of the final trial and they had even made a bet based on their results. But currently, the final trial's exit had been open for some time already and seemed to be closing soon, and yet the two of them hadn't appeared. The hopes of them showing up became more and more uncertain, and the surrounding people couldn't help but start speaking in hushed whispers. Big Flame and the third Crown Prince both perished. Unbelievable that two extremely talented individuals with chances of becoming Empyreans in the future would die here. The final trial is far too dangerous. Indeed, although many people survived, the truth is that most of them don't have a high completion percentage. Many of them had given up on the fourth level. If they really had to struggle for great lucky chances, then that would have been extremely perilous for them. Before, I envied those people who found such great lucky chances, but now that I see it, if we were to go, it's unknown whether we could come back out. As everyone was speaking, an enchanting blue light shot over their heads, followed by a faint cold wind. As everyone was startled, they looked up to see a blue beam of light arcing across the endless skies and disappearing into boundless Divine Mountain. The speed was so fast that some people even wondered whether or not that was an illusion just now. The cold wind gradually dissipated, but a vague and ethereal pressure remained in the air, not fading for a long time. Soul Empress Sheng Mai. Yes, she seems to have entered boundless Divine Mountain. Everyone took a deep breath, their words filled with reverence. For the last 100 million years, Soul Empress Sheng Mai had maintained the top final trial record of 83% completion, even suppressing the good fortune Saint Sun and leaving behind a legend that would last for 100 generations. And this time, without a doubt, Soul Empress Sheng Mai had created an even higher record. It was horrifying just thinking about it. Outstanding young elites like the Divine Void Third Crown Prince and Big Flame had likely perished in the final trial, yet Sheng Mai had not only easily returned, but created new record. This difference was simply far too great. Soul Empress, what was her completion percentage? Someone couldn't help but ask. They began looking towards the several Divine Void Divine Kingdom disciples that had returned from the final trial. Of these disciples, some of them had joined with Sheng Mai in combating the undying inferno. Because of their hesitancy and fear, they had been a single step away from entering the 6th level and becoming legends in their own right. Otherwise, they could have easily obtained a completion percentage in the 70s. Hearing this question, senior apprentice Brother Yang replied, "The Soul Empress, she is likely at 89%. On the 5th level, when Sheng Mai, Lin Ming, Xiao Moxian, Dragonscar, and the others had killed the undying polar ice, the ones who had left weren't too far away. With their extremely keen hearing, they were able to hear what was happening far away. Thus, when Sheng Mai, Lin Ming, and Xiao Moxian joined forces to create a miracle, they had faintly heard what Sheng Mai's completion percentage was. To them, this hadn't been too shocking, but had seemed perfectly normal. But when this information fell into the ears of those present, it was like a bolt of lightning smashing down from nowhere. What? 89%? Are you joking with me? The one who asked was shocked. Let alone them, even Imperial Scholar Sun and High Prince Whitefeather suddenly regained their composure from their sorrow of losing their top disciples. They both looked towards the disciple who had been speaking with disbelief etched on their features. This number was far too bewildering. For a time, all of them were unable to accept it. 89%, are you sure? It's true, senior apprentice Brother Young gulped, a bitter smile on his face. He had been just a step away from leaving behind his own legend. How could he not be filled with regret? How can it be so high? Do you know what sort of concept that number is? In the stories, even those who become true divinities will only reach 85% or above. How can her score be so high? Imperial Scholar Sun muttered to himself again and again. He simply couldn't regain his wits. Senior apprentice Brother Young helplessly said, it wasn't so high to begin with, but because they killed the 5th level overlord they were able to enter the 6th level and thus their score increased by several points. Originally, the Soul Empress completion percentage wasn't so exaggerated. The more senior apprentice Brother Young spoke, the more bitter he felt. Speaking these words was the same as picking at his scabs. Killing the 5th level overlord and entering the 6th level? Imperial Scholar Sun and the others sucked in a breath of cold air. Although they didn't know what the 5th level overlord was, they did know that the 6th level was a legend. In the last billion years, there hadn't been anyone who managed to accomplish the magnificent feat of entering that mysterious land. The Soul Empress is really fierce, she actually killed the 5th level overlord. High Prince White Feather gulped. Even though the saints were hostile to Shung Mai's Spiritus race, he couldn't help but admire such a powerful woman. However, these words caused a strange look to appear on senior apprentice Brother Young's face. This is, although he didn't want to, he couldn't help but say, the one who killed the 5th level overlord wasn't the Soul Empress. Millimeter? Everyone paused. They all looked towards this senior apprentice Brother Young. If it wasn't Shung Mai, then who was it? High Prince White Feather asked, puzzlement on his face. It was that fellow called Lin Ming. Speaking Lin Ming's name, senior apprentice Brother Young couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Really, this was what it meant to be inferior to others. Lin Ming's horrifying performance on the 5th level had left him shocked and awed, and he knew he could never catch up to this Lin Ming no matter how hard he tried. Lin Ming. You're speaking of, Imperial Scholar Sun was stunned. He queerly said, are you telling me it's that boy from the Divine Runic Masters Guild? Many people hadn't heard Lin Ming's name before. Although he could be called a celebrity within the Azura Road, the truth was that Lin Ming was only a big figure within the professional circles of Divine Runic Masters, so it wasn't strange if others didn't know of him. But, when he entered the final trial, there had been a good number of people that recognized him. Because a Divine Runic Master invested so much time into studying the Divine Runic arts, their combat ability was normally nothing to mention at all. It was already fantastic for young Divine Runic Masters to be able to follow the cultivation pace of their peers, let alone participate in the ruthless final trial. Thus, when Lin Ming appeared, many people had started to talk about him, and so others knew of his existence. And now they were being informed that Lin Ming had killed the 5th level overlord. They couldn't help but glance at each other, dumbfounded. What was the meaning of this? Do you need to use the Divine Runic arts to kill the 5th level overlord? Some people couldn't help but make this association. They didn't believe that Lin Ming surpassed Shung Mai in strength. But these people were soon disappointed. Senior apprentice Brother Young shook his head and said, no, in order to kill the 5th level overlord what you need is strength. When the 5th level overlord was in the state of the undying polar ice, only Lin Ming had the ability to kill it. He really did have the true ability to kill the 5th level overlord. Moreover, his completion percentage was even more exaggerated. As the disciple spoke to hear, he slowly said, he had 92% completion. With this number, the entire audience of martial artists fell into a deep silence. 92%. Everyone held their breath, unable to believe this. Chapter 1741, Law Proclamation. Chapter 1741, Law Proclamation. A completion rate of 92%. This couldn't even be described as a legend. It was simply outrageous. Imagine. A future true divinity needed 85% to 87%. This was completely different from 92%. Whether it was 70 to 80, or 80 to 90, there was a distance as great as the heavens and earth between them. It was almost impossible to look up at a score as high as 92%. Impossible. You must have made a mistake. High Prince Whitefeather looked towards that senior apprentice Brother Yang with disbelief. Senior apprentice Brother Yang coldly said, "What meaning is there in me lying to you? Moreover, many people will know of this soon. Even if I lie, it will be seen through. Also, once the final trial ends, those with a completion rate surpassing 80% will have their names inscribed with lines of the heavenly Tao. You can naturally see it for yourself." The final completion rate for trial challengers had never been a secret. Part of the reason was that trial challengers spread out the information themselves, but another reason was that these results were shown through the world laws, especially for those with high completion rates. For instance, in the past Sheng Mai and the Good Fortune Saint Sun had their completion percentages spread throughout the entire Azura Road. When Lin Ming had casually suppressed a little robber gang, even one of their members, Soulwhite, had known of the completion percentages for Sheng Mai and the Good Fortune Saint Sun. This was a matter that could not be hidden. Senior apprentice Brother Yang's words caused the audience to go silent once more. Their stunned expressions looked as complex as a divine runic symbol. All of them were unable to find the appropriate words. Some of these people had once gone to the Divine Rune City auction and had seen Lin Ming personally sell promissory notes for billions of contribution points. Just a month of work and Lin Ming had amassed billions of contribution points, even causing Empireans to engage in a bidding war. That scene had left a sharp and vivid memory in their minds, one that they would never be able to forget. In particular, when Lin Ming had calmly drawn an improved divine runic symbol in the face of hundreds of thousands of people without any fear of failing at all. Not just that, but he even did so with 20 dark divine runic masters eyeing him. No matter how high their cultivations, they had all been grasped by Lin Ming. He simply didn't care about their spying techniques at all. Rather, he let them sit there and collected viewing fees from them, allowing them to watch as they liked. Such boldness, such daring, they couldn't help but admire him. Now, over 20 years had passed and Lin Ming had reappeared in the final trial, creating yet another miracle. This caused everyone to find it hard to connect these two peerless individuals together. An extremely talented divine runic master as well as a monstrous battle freak that surpassed a peerless genius like Sheng Mai. Were these two really the same person? Where did he find so much time? Where did he find the energy to accomplish all of this? At the same time, a similar scene was occurring on Boundless Divine Mountain. Of course, the one respectfully listening this time was Soul Emperor Divine Void, and the one speaking to him was Soul Empress Sheng Mai. Originally, Soul Emperor Divine Void had placed down a celebration banquet to greet Sheng Mai, arranging all sorts of top heavenly materials to cook up spirit foods and spirit wines, all of it set on a grand table. The cost of this celebration feast was even more expensive than an Empyrean spirit treasure. As soon as Sheng Mai entered Boundless Divine Mountain, Soul Emperor Divine Void had raised a glass to congratulate her as well as inquire into her completion percentage. After learning she obtained an 89% completion rate, he was naturally stunned. Although he knew that Sheng Mai was amazing, he didn't think it would be so exaggerated. After praising her for some time, Soul Empress Sheng Mai suddenly informed him that her completion percentage wasn't the highest, but there was also Lin Ming with an even more exaggerated 92%. This caused Soul Emperor Divine Void to stand up where he was, lost in a frozen daze for some time. If these words hadn't come from Sheng Mai's lips but from someone else, Soul Emperor Divine Void would have thought they were making careless jokes. But Sheng Mai was someone with a naturally serious personality who never made such jokes. Lin Ming, where did he come from? Soul Emperor Divine Void asked Sheng Mai after being silent for 10 breaths of time, incredulity thick in his voice. He is a human genius from the 33 heavens. He should originate from the divine realm. If it weren't for Lin Ming, my completion percentage would only be 86. For me to achieve an 89% completion rate, I must thank him for that. To reach the 6th level with an 89% completion rate, this had given Sheng Mai rich rewards. The Azura Roadmaster was someone who had comprehensively understood the laws of the 33 heavens. No matter which trial challenger came, no matter what laws they practiced, he could pass down peerless insights to them. In addition, there was the undying polar ice's soul fire. This allowed Sheng Mai's strength to increase by another level and allowed her grand reincarnation art to reach perfection of the 6th revolution. Hearing Sheng Mai's words, Soul Emperor Divine Void's throat twitched a little. He ruefully smiled. If what you say is true, then he is indeed a peerless monstrous talent. However, Sheng Mai, you need not underestimate yourself. After all, your grand reincarnation art has yet to reach completion. Once you complete your 9 revolutions and come to the final trial again, obtaining a score past 92% won't be difficult for you at all. Sheng Mai shook her head. I don't know if I can surpass 92% or not, but what I am sure of is that after several hundred or thousand years, if Lin Ming returns to the final trial, he will definitely surpass a 92% completion rate. In this universe, it isn't only I who is growing. Although those with normal levels of talent won't change, this isn't true for those that are gifted with unsurpassed talent. When Sheng Mai spoke of those gifted with unsurpassed talent, those she spoke of was a range restricted to the top geniuses of an entire race. Only such a character, born in a race every billion years, would be able to borrow the momentum of the world's great calamity to be born. In the 33 heavens, those with unsurpassed talent were the good fortune Saint Sun, Lin Ming, and Sheng Mai. Although Sheng Mai didn't care much about the good fortune Saint Sun, she actually felt a deep sense of admiration towards Lin Ming. She had said to Lin Ming that his appearance was the good fortune of humanity. However, as to whether or not this good fortune could help humanity weather the great calamity, Sheng Mai hadn't told Lin Ming her thoughts. In fact, she also knew that humanity's great calamity wasn't as simple as it seemed to be. Are you saying that Lin Ming will surpass 92% in the future? If so, then that is even more terrifying. Hey, where is this Lin Ming now? Soul Emperor Divine Void suddenly asked Sheng Mai. Sheng Mai lightly looked at Divine Void and serenely said, you shouldn't be asking this because you have some dark intentions towards Lin Ming, right? Towards a character on the level of Soul Emperor Divine Void, the current Lin Ming had absolutely no ability to resist. Lin Ming was just far too monstrous a talent, but elephants were also killed because mortals coveted their ivory tusks. If Lin Ming didn't have the protection of some super influence, then others would inevitably form thoughts of cutting him down early. Millimeter? Soul Emperor Divine Void seemed to sense something from Sheng Mai's tone. You seem to be protecting him? You can say that. Sheng Mai confidently stated. He must have obtained a great lucky chance in the final trial, but his lucky chance isn't what others can obtain. Even if Lin Ming dies, I fear you cannot take his lucky chance. I know your character, do not move against him. Sheng Mai said, a light warning in her words. Why do you protect him? Is it because he helped you in killing the 5th level overlord, allowing your completion percentage to increase by 3 points? Soul Emperor Divine Void said with surprise as he looked at Sheng Mai. In truth, he hadn't said anything about harming Lin Ming at the start. After all, when it came to peerless geniuses like Lin Ming, it was hard to harm or kill them even when they were small and weak. This type of person often had countless lucky chances on their body and an endless number of life-saving cards. If one couldn't catch such a person, then making them a foe was absolutely not a good idea. Thus in ordinary circumstances, unless one was crazy, few influences who didn't have any hatred at all would try to harm those who ended the final trial with a high completion percentage. That's part of the reason. Sheng Mai trailed off before not explaining any further. She clearly had no intention of speaking of her other reasons. Soul Emperor Divine Void also remained silent. He knew it was meaningless to continue pressing the question. At this time, above the Azure Sea, the final trial's exit passage had completely closed. When the exit passage closed, the heavens and earth began to change. Countless Azure law lines began to gather from all over, forming massive words in the endless skies above the Azure Road. These words were each 1,000 miles large and stretched out for hundreds of thousands of miles. They filled the entire Azure Sea with a magnificent and overpowering momentum, ancient and boundless. What these words recorded were the completion percentages of Lin Ming, Xiao Moxian, and Sheng Mai. Of these words, the most eye-catching was Lin Ming's name and his completion score of 92%. Countless laws gathered to form the words, and just by looking at them one felt their blood vitality tumble and their inner world tremble. Under the vast words formed by the heavenly Tao, anyone, even sole Emperor Divine Void, felt extremely small. The 100,000+ people on the Azura Sea, whether they were senior supreme elders or heroic young elites, all felt shock from the depths of their hearts. As for old Schwer and old Sue, who had already heard the news, they stood beneath the vast skies for an entire 2 hours looking at these words, unable to summon anything to say. They originally thought that Lin Ming's results wouldn't be bad, but this wouldn't be bad had them both living in something that felt like a dream. With such a miracle, the name Lin Ming was destined to leave behind an endless legend in the Azura Road. This massive law proclamation continued in the skies above the Azura Sea for 9 days and 9 nights before slowly scattering. However, before the law proclamation faded away, the name of Lin Ming had already spread through every intelligence network, large influence, and spy organization in the entire Azura Road. Even those in the outer Azura Road were only 2 or 3 days behind in news. After that, everyone knew of this event. After all, everyone paid an extreme amount of attention to the final trial. Once the results were announced, the news would rapidly spread. For a time, countless influences wanted to know who Lin Ming was and where he came from. Some of these influences had dark thoughts against Lin Ming, but most of them simply wanted to greet him and form good relations. If they could achieve such a goal, they were willing to pay a steep price. Whether it was heavenly goods, top-grade materials, all sorts of spirit treasures, magic weapons, cultivation methods, or proud daughters of heaven to be used for dual cultivation, everything imaginable was offered up. However, all of these influences failed in their goal. After the final trial ended, Lin Ming hadn't appeared in public at all. Together with Xiao Moxian, the two of them seemed to have vanished from the world, completely disappearing. Chapter 1742, To Settle All Ties. Chapter 1742, To Settle All Ties. A short time after being transmitted from the final trial, Lin Ming and Xiao Moxian found each other. Then they contacted Mo Brightmoon and met up. Together, the three of them used the Azura command to leave the Azura Sea. At this time, the people above the Azura Sea didn't even know that Lin Ming had created a miracle of obtaining a 92% completion rate. Lin Ming quietly left, not wanting to stand atop the waves of attention. When the exit passage of the final trial opened, influences from all over would gather and there would likely be some people intending to plot against him. He naturally didn't want to be targeted by these people. The final trial had already ended and now he planned to return to the divine realm in the near future. But before doing that, there was a matter he needed to finish. This matter was only a matter of convenience for Lin Ming, but it could also give him decent benefits. To him, this could be considered his final mark in his adventures through the Azura Road. 1 month later, Setting Sun City. Setting Sun City was located in a remote area of the inner Azura Road. However, there were some nearby areas that were rich in spiritual energy, and thus this land was occupied by an Empyrean-level influence, the Far East family. This also made Setting Sun City a bustling marketplace. As one of the inner Azura Road's largest intelligence networks, Heaven's Secret naturally wouldn't miss out on such a large city. In Setting Sun City, there was also a branch division of Heaven's Secret. Every day, many martial artists would come to this Heaven's Secret branch division looking for information, and on this day, a common-looking black-clothed youth happened to visit. This black-clothed youth was of medium height and carried a heavy sword on his back. His looks were ordinary and there were circular demon tattoos on his face, making him look a bit fierce. He walked through the streets, a faint slaughter energy rolling off of him, causing people to unconsciously avoid him. Like this, he walked to Heaven's Secret. "Mister, how do you do? What rank of news would you like to ask about?" The doorman felt his heart jump as he saw this black-clothed youth. After waiting at the doors of Heaven's Secret for so many years, he had naturally seen all sorts of characters. His intuition told him that this black-clothed youth in front of him wasn't simple at all. "I am looking for someone, a great world king," the black-clothed youth lightly said. The doorman's pupils shrank. Although this black-clothed youth didn't seem too old, he actually searched for a great world king. Of course, he wouldn't ask this guest what his reasons were. He respectfully bowed and waved his hand in welcome. "Of course, please follow me to the 6th floor. The black-clothed youth nodded and followed the doorman into Heaven's secret pavilion. In the middle of a chamber on the 6th floor of Heaven's secret pavilion, a blue-clothed old man was solemnly sitting behind a table. The entire pavilion was filled with a fragrant smoke that resembled fog. The doorman introduced the black-clothed youth to the chamber and then respectfully drew back, head bowed. "I hear that this guest wishes to inquire into news about a great world king. May I ask which great world king this is?" The blue-clothed old man was tall and thin. His hands rested above a white jade cutting board and his voice was calm like a mountain. The cutting board continued to shimmer with the strange power of runes, as if endless information was constantly surging atop it. The blue-clothed old man's eyes unwittingly swept over the black-clothed youth in front of him, as if he were trying to see through his origins. This black-clothed youth emitted an extremely strange aura. The blue-clothed old man's probing was immediately sensed. Just looking at this black-clothed youth, besides the vigorous man-eating demonic aura that seemed to roll off him, he seemed to constantly fade in and out of the world, as if he could disappear at any time. It was an extremely strange feeling. The old man looked for a long time but eventually gave up on discerning this young man's origins. The black-clothed youth thought for a moment and then calmly said, "Dark Divine Runic Grandmaster, Shadow Overflow. I am looking for him about some matters." "Grandmaster Overflow?" The blue-clothed old man's eyebrows shot up. He gently traced his beard. When the average person asked about Shadow Overflow, it was usually to make deals that couldn't be seen in the daylight. He guessed that this black-clothed youth was in a similar situation. He didn't ask much. He simply put forth the fee for the information and then drew several strange lines atop a jade slip. After some time, the information within the jade slip started to rapidly reorganize itself, sparkling. In the void, several brilliant characters began to appear. Darktide City, Tiger Hunt Cave. Once he had carefully read the meaning behind these characters, the blue-clothed old man began to slowly answer. After obtaining this answer, the black-clothed youth bowed. The demonic circles on his face emitted a faint black light. It was impossible to know what expression he was making. Slowly standing up, the black-clothed youth left a 9-sun jade on the table. Then, his figure flickered and he disappeared. Darktide City, Tiger Hunt Cave. The black-clothed youth chewed over the name of this area. As he flew through the skies, he was like a black rainbow arching through the heavens. And as he was flying, this black-clothed youth's appearance gradually changed. The demonic tattoos on his face slowly hid themselves, he became taller, and the edges of his face became sharper and more contoured. This person was Lin Ming. The reason he had changed his appearance to go to Heaven's Secret and ask about Shadow Overflow was to complete the last matter he wanted to seal in the Azura Road. That was killing Shadow Overflow. Firstly, Shadow Overflow had a grudge against Lin Ming, and Lin Ming could sense that this person was sinister and cruel, always taking revenge for the smallest slights. Although the chance that he would be able to harm Lin Ming in the future was extremely small, Lin Ming didn't want to give him the tiniest chance to do so. Many years ago, when Lin Ming was in the 7 Profound Valleys, he had offended the 7 Profound Valleys Acacia faction's Ouyang family. Because of that, Lin Ming had been taught a profound lesson. Due to his carelessness, Qin Xingxuan had nearly been killed by the Ouyang family. From that point on, Lin Ming had firmed his resolve. When it came to enemies that could harm him, his family, or his friends, he would treat them ruthlessly without the slightest bit of mercy, cutting down the problem at the roots as soon as possible. Sometimes, even the most common-seeming characters could come back to bite like a viper in the grass. Also, there were other reasons Lin Ming wanted to kill Shadow Overflow. Lin Ming had grasped the Azura Heavenly Array diagram, and now he could bring the power of the Azura Heavenly Dao laws back to the 33 heavens. Before leaving the Azura Road, he wanted his divine runic arts to be even more perfect. Shadow Overflow was a giant amongst all Dark Divine Runic Masters and had mastered the wide breadth of knowledge of the Dark Divine Runic arts. He was highly adept at applying various laws and principles to different situations. Shadow Overflow's memories of the Dark Divine Runic arts were extremely tempting to Lin Ming. These were memories he had to obtain. They would allow him to save many years of work. The setting sun was like inky blood. A towering city stood in the midst of a howling sandstorm. The exposed city walls were rugged and simple, seeming as if they could collapse at any moment. The entire area was cold and desolate. Several decayed sentry towers stood behind the city gates. No one manned these sentry towers. There were only carrion vultures resting above them, sending out sharp cries. "This is Darktide City." Lin Ming pulled down his black hood, biting his lips as he stood in the dusty sands and looked at the bleak sand-swept city in front of him. According to the information he gathered, Darktide City was a well-known crime capital in the outer Azura Road. It was an extremely evil and malevolent city. Here, rogues and thugs ran rampant. Most of these thugs had committed a number of evil deeds. Darktide City just happened to be at the junction of many nearby holy lands and divine kingdoms. Thus, because it was under no one's jurisdiction, it had become a paradise for numerous criminals. Lin Ming didn't think that such a famous crime capital would be desolate in such a manner. It was really startling. If he hadn't obtained information from Heaven's Secret, Lin Ming would never have thought that the famous dark divine runic grandmaster Shadow Overflow would live in such a grim place. Millimeter. Suddenly, Lin Ming became keenly aware that there were slight energy fluctuations in the skies. These types of fluctuations were even weaker than fluctuations of light. However, because of the incredible sensitivity of Lin Ming's senses, he was able to instantly lock onto the locus of changes in the air. His lips curved up in a faint sneer. Putting on an ignorant appearance, Lin Ming flipped his black hood back on and slowly walked towards the city entrance. Behind him, a strong big fellow drilled out of the void, draped in translucent wings. This person carried a metal trident that shined with strange runes. He was impressively a member of the monster race. Human. The monster fellow showed a greedy smile. Then, this fellow saw a strange divine runic symbol slowly flutter down from the air. The divine runic symbol had a clear word written upon it: imprison. This word exuded threads of mystic power. The wind rose, and in the next moment a web of golden wires shot out, tightly wrapping around the monster fellow, tightly locking onto his flesh and blood. The monster fellow cried out in alarm. However, in the next moment, all his cries were sealed off, leaving him unable to cry. He wasn't able to summon any monster essence from within his body, making him seem like a dead dog being hung in the air. The monster fellow revealed a look full of panic and dread. Lin Ming floated up, looking down at this robber with imposing contempt. A faint killing intent shined in his eyes, making this monster fellow's heart shake and sweat drip down his back. "Tell me, what is the situation of Tiger Hunt Cave? Do you know someone called Shadow Overflow?" Lin Ming icily said to the monster fellow. As Lin Ming spoke, his pupils changed color, becoming a deep dark abyss. If a common martial artist were to look at Lin Ming now, they would feel as if their soul was being sucked into his eyes. This was an arcane skill of the Azura Sutra's second volume. As the monster fellow met Lin Ming's eyes, his body shook, his eyes glazed over and his expression turned blank. His sea of consciousness had been thoroughly muddled by Lin Ming's soul force. In the next moment, the monster fellow opened his mouth and spoke of everything he knew. The monster fellow happened to be someone from Darktide City's Tiger Hunt Cave. From his mouth, Lin Ming had been able to learn a great deal of useful information. Gently shaking his robes, Lin Ming's figure began to dim among the yellow sands, disappearing into the void. As for that monster fellow, he tumbled to the ground, his eyes still blank and his face pale like an idiot. His spiritual sea had suffered irreversible damage, and from this point on he was ruined. From the moment that Lin Ming entered this monster fellow's mind, he had learned that he normally raped and pillaged, killing others to steal their possessions. Facing a villain like this who only committed evil deeds, Lin Ming would show no leniency. Removing one such person was the same as saving many lives. Chapter 1743, Killing Shadow Overflow. Chapter 1743, Killing Shadow Overflow. Although Darktide City was in name a city, the truth was that it encompassed a massive region. Within this region were innumerable gangs of murderers, robbers, various influences, and even dark divine runic masters. Tiger Hunt Cave was located beneath Sunflare Mountain at the very center of Darktide City. When the last rays of blood-red light struck Sunflare Mountain, waves of glorious light would emit from the base of the mountain, as if daytime was rising where the light came from. If one looked carefully, they would see that this brilliant daylight was composed of countless divine runic symbols. This formed an extremely formidable tidal wave of defense. The giant Tiger Hunt Cave was carved into the mountainside. It was over 10,000 feet wide. Magnificent structures towered into the skies, illuminated with candle-like lights all over. It was a beautiful and enchanting sight. The massive structural complex had no guards. From within, one could only hear the laughs and frolicking screams of women. 100 meters from the periphery of Tiger Hunt Cave, Lin Ming circled around a rocky peak. Beneath the waves of light from the divine runic symbols, his figure constantly shimmered like an image on the rippling surface of a lake. It was hard to make out his appearance. After emerging from the space of the final trial and obtaining the second volume of the Asura Sutra, Lin Ming had reached the pinnacle in attainments of soul-forging laws. This sort of understanding manifested in Lin Ming's previously learned cultivation methods. By using a bit of soul force with the divine dream law and combining it with the power of space, he was able to freely move and deceive the eyes of ordinary martial artists. As he arrived in front of the defensive divine runic symbols, he narrowed his eyes. He scanned the palatial structures within Tiger Hunt Cave, a trace of killing intent passing through his eyes. One hand gently followed the trajectory of a nearby divine runic symbol, creating an energy line. Lin Ming slowly perceived the energy structure. Then, after a moment, he forcefully opened up a gap within the supposedly impregnable divine runic symbols. His form flickered as he passed inside. Tiger Hunt Cave. There was a lustrous palace resplendent in gold and jade, covered in beams of shimmering energy. The palace rose high into the air. Coming from within the central hall of this grand palace, there was the sound of lively chatter. There was currently a banquet feast being held in the palace. The sounds of cheers and boisterous laughter lingered in the air. At this banquet feast was a crowd of dark divine runic masters in long black robes. Sitting at the highest seat of honor was the infamous Grandmaster Overflow, one of the top dark divine runic masters of the Asura Road. The other dark divine runic masters surrounded Shadow Overflow like planets around a sun. Some of them were a little drunk and had flushed faces. Beside them were beautiful young girls carrying platters of wine and meat, their bodies only covered by the thinnest layers of gauze. Their large chests and slender waists were clearly illuminated with each light step they took. The entire feast was filled with the smell of wine and meat, mixed with the fragrance of a young girl's flavors. Grandmaster Overflow, recently our business has become increasingly good. All of that is thanks to Grandmaster's luck. A middle-aged dark divine runic master said, raising a glass of wine as he flattered Shadow Overflow with a drunk smile. Haha, if things continue like this then in the future, all of the dark divine runic masters around Darktide City will have to work under the Grandmaster. Someone laughed out loud. Facing these people's flattery, Shadow Overflow only ominously smiled. His smile was a bit cold. As the present dark divine runic masters saw Shadow Overflow's expression, they all shrunk their necks. They knew that Shadow Overflow was likely in an extremely poor mood. If one had to think of a reason, it was all because of the results of the Asura Road's final trial. There had been a certain individual who had created a miracle and obtained a 92% completion rate, and this person was none other than Shadow Overflow's sworn enemy, Lin Ming. This meant that Lin Ming possessed unimaginable talent. In the near future, he could kill Shadow Overflow as easily as stepping on an ant. In this sort of situation, Shadow Overflow felt as if a mountain was constantly pressing down on his chest, leaving him unable to take a single breath. So in recent days, whenever someone mentioned Lin Ming's name, Shadow Overflow would look as if he had taken a cup of poison. With Lin Ming in the Asura Road, as long as he grew up, Shadow Overflow would never be able to publicly appear for the rest of his life. He would have to live like a little underground mouse. The other dark divine runic masters had correctly guessed Shadow Overflow's thoughts. One of them said, Grandmaster Overflow, I've already contacted some intelligence networks and underworld influences to search for Lin Ming's whereabouts. As long as there is any news found about him, then we can release the information to those influences who have dark intentions towards Lin Ming. I'm sure they will be extremely interested. That's right, although it's difficult for us to take out Lin Ming, those evil influences are ruthless and cruel. They will definitely covet the secrets and lucky chances that Lin Ming has. Several dark divine runic masters grinned as they spoke. Hearing these words, Shadow Overflow was finally in a better mood. He said, "That little beast, this time he really did put himself in the limelight, but a tree outside of the forest will be blown down by the wind. Since he's made himself so high profile, there are innumerable influences targeting him. I hope that those dark influences can kill him, but I guess we'll have to wait to see the play." As Shadow Overflow spoke, hatred flashed in his eyes. He threw back the blood-red wine in his glass in a gulp. As long as he thought of Lin Ming being killed, his entire body would shiver with excitement. "You little beast, just you wait. And that little witch that follows him, it's best if they are both ruined together." Thinking of the black-clothed girl that followed Lin Ming, Shadow Overflow suddenly fiendishly grinned. Without any indication, he reached out and grabbed one of the beautiful maids nearby, ruthlessly kneading her milk-white breasts. The maid paled. She bit her lips, but she was only able to look at Shadow Overflow with a pleasing smile. Hee hee. Shadow Overflow lasciviously chuckled several times. He grasped the maid by the waist and then turned to walk towards the back gardens. In the darkness, an indifferent Lin Ming followed him like a god of death arriving in the midst of night. The divine runic symbol traps arranged in the air or placed on the ground were nothing in front of him. He could skillfully bypass them all. This was also because Lin Ming had cultivated the Azura Sutra Volume 2. With that, his understanding of the laws of divine runic arts had gone even further. To him, these traps existed in name only. Pa! Another barrier of divine runic symbols was broken open by Lin Ming. His clothing fluttered around him. Like an owl, he flew deep into the back gardens, blending in with the endless darkness. The thinly clothed maid was tossed onto a bed. Staring at her creamy white body, a pleased grin appeared on Shadow Overflow's face. To the current Shadow Overflow, beauty no longer had any temptation for him. What he liked was recklessly ruining and conquering nubile young maids in order to give vent to the sadness and feelings of suppression in his heart. Just as he was about to throw himself onto the maid, he suddenly froze. Although he had to spend a great deal of his time and energy on the divine runic arts, his strength and cultivation were still those of a great world king. He had sharp senses and was able to detect a strange, thread-thin fluctuation of strength in the air. He slowly turned his head, looking towards a window lattice. There, hovering in the air, was a tall black-haired youth. He wore a black robe and his entire body seemed wrapped in darkness. Strange circular demonic tattoos rippled along his neck, constantly moving without end. As he looked down from his commanding position, his stare was cold and ruthless, like a hawk staring at its prey. How did you get in?" Shadow Overflow felt his scalp tingle and all the hairs on his body rise up. He was a 6th-level Dark Divine Runic Master and he had extremely deep attainments in the Divine Runic Arts. Within Tiger Hunt Cave, he had laid down layers upon layers of array formations and trapped divine runic symbols. Because of this, he simply didn't need any guards. With such a solid and complex defense, how did this black-haired youth come in? His intuition was screaming to him that something was wrong here. He didn't know who this unexpected intruder was. This intruder's face was covered by his strange dark demonic tattoos, making it impossible to clearly see his face. Shadow Overflow didn't know why, but this youth gave off a familiarly repugnant feeling, one that aroused his loathing. "No matter who you are, since you dare to intrude upon my lair, then die," Shadow Overflow coldly sneered. As a 6th-level Dark Divine Runic Master, he had experienced and weathered countless storms before. Towards this unknown visitor, although he was startled, he wasn't afraid. He didn't think that this person's cultivation was too high. His hands wove lines in the void. The originally calm space began to bubble and explode with energy like raging lava. The surrounding walls were all covered with colorful god-beast drawings. And now, they seemed to come alive, releasing a strange mystical power of fire. At this time, Lin Ming could also clearly feel that Shadow Overflow's chamber seemed to come alive. The glistening dyes used to draw the murals on the walls began to shine and emit a turbulent essence energy. They were clearly manufactured from wonderful fire attribute heavenly materials. In front of Shadow Overflow, a lifelike fire rune was drawn, one that looked like a snake formed from flame. The fire essence energy in the dyes on the murals started to be energized and drawn into the middle of the rune. Everything was actually a mighty and massive divine runic symbol. Lin Ming was startled. He didn't think that Shadow Overflow had filled his entire chamber with materials used to draw a divine runic symbol and could instantly summon them to defend against enemies. In a moment, a blazing hot divine runic symbol appeared, so hot that even the air began to bubble. The ground instantly cracked and melted away. Lin Ming was directly surrounded by these flames. The demonic tattoos on his body and the black energy around him began to burn, rapidly dissipating. As the demonic energy dissipated, it also caused Lin Ming's face to be revealed. Since he came to Shadow Overflow's lair, he hadn't changed his appearance. Shadow Overflow was now able to clearly see Lin Ming's face. As Shadow Overflow saw this face that had haunted him like a nightmare, he suddenly felt as if he had fallen into an icy lake. "It's you, Lin Ming." Shadow Overflow's withered old eyes opened wide. He looked at Lin Ming with hate and fear. You actually dared to enter my mansion. No matter what, he never imagined that while the dark divine runic masters under his command were searching everywhere for information about Lin Ming's whereabouts in order to share it with evil influences, Lin Ming would actually come to him on his own initiative and try to attack him. But Lin Ming didn't even have a Holy Lord cultivation. Was it possible he thought he could kill a great world king? Shadow Overflow certainly wouldn't doubt Lin Ming's talent, but for a half-step Holy Lord to kill a great world king, Shadow Overflow didn't believe Lin Ming had this ability. Chapter 1744, Leaving the Azura Road. Chapter 1744, Leaving the Azura Road. Because of Shadow Overflow's sudden attack, the entire chamber was turned burning hot. And when this energy burned through the demonic tattoos that covered Lin Ming's body and was released from the control of Shadow Overflow's soul force, it began to rapidly spread everywhere. Flames spread all around, burning up the entire chamber, turning it into a conflagration of hell. The young maid that had been tossed on Shadow Overflow's bed cried out in alarm. Her clothes had caught fire and she would soon be swallowed up by the tongues of fire. With her cultivation, it was naturally impossible for her to resist the shockwaves from the fires. Seeing this, Lin Ming frowned. He flicked a finger and a rune came whistling out, covering the maid. After the rune absorbed all of the flames, it transported her far outside. Shadow Overflow saw all of this happen. A severe and mercilessly cold light flashed in his eyes. "You dare to divert your attention at such a time? Die!" Shadow Overflow shouted out loud. He grasped 3 divine runic symbols from his spatial ring and threw them towards Lin Ming. These 3 divine runic symbols all formed different shapes as they hurtled towards Lin Ming. They all possessed darkness attributes. As they shot through the void, they covered space in endless chaos. These were 6th grade divine runic symbols that Shadow Overflow kept on himself for self-defense. Facing Lin Ming, he cast them all out without a hint of hesitation. "Who?" The entire room was swallowed by the energy of the divine runic symbols. Within a terrifying black vortex, the walls, furniture, bed, everything was twisted into ash and then even the ash disappeared. This sort of disappearance was not disintegration or tearing, but complete annihilation, leaving not even the tiniest bit of matter to prove that they existed in the world once. This was the terror of the concept of darkness. Although Shadow Overflow's combat strength wasn't much, the divine runic symbols he drew up were considerably strong. By the time the darkness scattered, the entire palace had been razed, everything disappearing without a trace. This also included Lin Ming. In the midst of the ruins, the only one left was Shadow Overflow. As he looked at the mess around him, he maintained absolute vigilance. Although Lin Ming was only a half-step Holy Lord, Shadow Overflow didn't have the slightest thought of underestimating him. In his opinion, this junior had countless methods to use, and in addition to that he even obtained a 92% completion rate in the final trial. Shadow Overflow had no choice but to be careful. Did he die? Shadow Overflowed gripped a divine runic symbol in one hand, his eyes cold. He didn't think anything would be able to survive in that horrifying black vortex. But at the same time, he also didn't believe that someone like Lin Ming would die so easily. At this time, Shadow Overflow's pupils shrank and the greatest sense of crisis he had ever felt in his entire life washed over him. From not too far away, space tore open and a bright red spear thrust straight towards him. What followed this spear was the vast and boundless Grand Mist force field. It covered all space in a 1,000-foot radius. Lin Ming had hidden himself in a space distortion to avoid Shadow Overflow's attack. Now as he thrust out his spear, there was Grand Mist energy that blocked all directions for Shadow Overflow to dodge in. This brat! Shadow Overflow's face distorted grotesquely. From every pore on his body, black light shined out. Black energy surged, causing space itself to twist and surge. This black energy instantly formed a 50-foot-high demon soul with fiendish features and wearing pitch-black armor. Every scale of the armor had a howling ghost head stretching out of it. The demon soul was filled with surging soul force that filled the air with evil and pestilent energy. Blood pond hell! Shadow Overflow shouted out loud. In that moment, the surroundings for 1,000 feet all around turned into a suffocating hell, filled with a thick yin chill. He took out a ghost banner from his inner world. This ghost banner had many demon souls sealed within. Then, all of these demon souls came rushing out, filling the world with the howls of ghosts and the cries of God. These demon souls had already substantialized into reality. This was the manifestation of an extremely potent soul force. The demon souls plunged towards Lin Ming, their claws stretched out as a massive space storm followed them. As these ghosts rushed towards Lin Ming's from all direction, they emitted sad and pained cries. The sound waves crashed against the mind, making one feel intense fear. Divine soul attack. Lin Ming's eyebrows shot up. As a dark divine runic master and also a spiritus, Shadow Overflow possessed a number of soul attacks, all of them the kind that the spiritus were skilled in. But to Lin Ming, this attack wasn't anything at all. Woo, woo, woo. As the fierce ghosts cried out, Lin Ming's spear light was swallowed up by them. Then, they all continued rushing towards Lin Ming. Even within the Grand Mist space, Lin Ming could still feel a soul force wanting to sink into his body, making him turn cold. These ghosts aren't bad. Spiritus martial artists excelled in raising fierce ghosts to swallow the souls of enemies. To many martial artists, dealing with these malicious spirits was the same as living a nightmare. But to Lin Ming, they were actually a tonic. Lin Ming stretched out his hands. On his fingertips, faint traces of a strong aura of dead soul began to percolate. Black sparks appeared in his hand, slowly forming an ink-black wheel that spun around. Lin Ming cast out seal after seal, all of them impossibly complex. Then, behind him, the faint figure of an Azura appeared. As this Azura martial god appeared, the wheel began to spin even faster. The entire black wheel suddenly rose up, blocking out the skies. Dark purple heavenly Tao runes began to spin along, like planets circling a star. Myriad demon karmic wheel. Then, before any of the strong demon souls that leapt towards Lin Ming were able to reach him, all of them were pulled up and sucked into the endless vortex created by the myriad demon karmic wheel. Woo woo. The ghosts howled in sorrow. One by one they were torn to pieces, turning into pure soul energy that was absorbed by Lin Ming. You. Shadow Overflow's eyes were blood red. Watching those demon souls blow up one at a time, he felt his heart drip blood. Those demon souls had been raised over tens of thousands of years and were fed countless lives to be produced. He had even fused a part of his own life spirit into them to refine them. Now they were being twisted into pieces and absorbed by Lin Ming. How could he not be angry? He hurriedly wanted to take back those ghosts, but he discovered that the black wheel Lin Ming summoned was like an all-consuming black hole. Once a ghost fell into the traction range of that black hole, it couldn't escape. Even Shadow Overflow's life spirit was swallowed up. Ah! Shadow Overflow cried out miserably. He felt a severe pain in his spiritual sea. Blood leaked out of his nose and mouth. His life spirit being swallowed caused tremendous damage to him. With a loud cracking sound, the ghost streamer he held was also twisted and broken by that endless black soul storm. What sort of cultivation method is that? Shadow Overflow was panic-stricken. He was heavily bleeding from all orifices on his head. His body swayed and his face was as pale as funeral paper. Lin Ming couldn't be bothered with speaking to Shadow Overflow. He turned his hand and the myriad demon karmic wheel was received back into his body. These souls that Shadow Overflow raised were a considerably nourishing tonic to Lin Ming. At this time, Lin Ming calmly stretched out his right hand. Motes of dark light condensed in his palm, shining with a mystic strength. After several breaths of time, a dark grey cube appeared in his palm, brimming with an ancient and powerful aura. Seeing this object appear, the already bleeding Shadow Overflow's entire body turned cold. His body shivered as if he had seen the most terrifying demon to ever exist. "What is that?" Shadow Overflow cried out in horror. As a spiritus powerhouse, he had an instinctual fear towards the magic cube. This was a suppression that came from the deepest depths of his soul. "Die!" Lin Ming didn't wait for Shadow Overflow to respond. He flicked his fingers and the grey magic cube turned into a beam of light that shot into the space between Shadow Overflow's eyebrows. In that moment, Shadow Overflow felt his body shake. He trembled, clawing at his head, his old face crazily distorting. What did you put in my spiritual sea?" As Shadow Overflow spoke, he felt a terrifying pain spread through him in agonizing waves, as if he would be torn apart at any moment. Lin Ming's expression was indifferent. He faced Shadow Overflow and reached out his hand. Shadow Overflow felt a giant invisible hand catch him and bring him floating up into the air. His expression was that of absolute pain and his withered face was twisted into an unrecognizable mess. He pulled at his hair like he wanted to tear open his head. At this time, Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. He turned his head and saw 5 black-robed men rushing towards his location in a panic. "What's going on? Who are you?" These 5 black-robed men were the dark divine runic masters that had been at Shadow Overflow's banquet feast. They had originally been in their own rooms, ravishing the maids they had chosen. But when they felt horrifying energy fluctuations spread out, they all quickly put on their clothes and rushed over to see the scene of Shadow Overflow being grasped in the air by Lin Ming. You are Lin Ming." Some of these dark divine runic masters had gone to the Divine Rune City auction, thus they recognized Lin Ming. Upon saying this, everyone's complexion changed. They glanced over at Shadow Overflow who was being gripped by Lin Ming, then, a feeling of intense fear rose in their hearts. Without further thinking, they all turned tail and ran. "None of you may leave," Lin Ming coldly said. Within Shadow Overflow's spiritual sea, the magic cube began to release an even more dazzling black light. An invisible black vortex started to revolve in Shadow Overflow's spiritual sea, becoming increasingly large. The vortex completely swallowed Shadow Overflow, and even those dark divine runic masters that tried to run were caught in the vortex, all of them twisted up by it. No matter how much they shouted out in anguish, all of them were sucked up into the vortex, none of them able to resist its terrifying strength as they were ripped to death. A moment later, the black vortex disappeared, turning into a grey cube that flew back into Lin Ming's body. Shadow Overflow, as well as those several dark divine runic masters, had their souls torn to shreds and swallowed into the magic cube. Beneath the unique corrosive ability of the magic cube, their souls turned into pure memory fragments that were sealed within the magic cube space. After Lin Ming killed these people, he turned and flew up without hesitation, shooting straight into the horizon. As he was flying, he waved his right hand and took out a plain command token from his spatial ring. It was unknown what metal this command token was made from. On the front was written Azura, and on the back there was the carving of a demon. This was the Azura command that allowed one to freely pass in and out of the Azura road. With the Azura command in hand, Lin Ming activated it. In the next moment, the Azura command released a dim bronze light that enveloped Lin Ming. Then his figure became increasingly dim. After half an incense stick of time, he completely vanished. Like this, Lin Ming left the Azura road. His 80 years of adventure in the Azura Road had finally come to an end. Chapter 1745, Return to the Divine Realm. Chapter 1745, Return to the Divine Realm. A boundless starry sky, limitless, without end. Somewhere in this vast space, at this moment, a giant space distortion appeared. Space split open and a space storm rushed out from the crack, followed by 2 women and 1 man. These 3 people were Lin Ming, Xiao Moxian, and Mo Bright Moon. After all these years, Lin Ming had finally returned to the Divine Realm. This was the homeland of humanity. Feeling the extremely familiar world laws around him, Lin Ming took a deep breath, filled with emotion. It felt as if everything he had known was a lifetime ago. But compared to Lin Ming, Xiao Moxian was actually ecstatic. Facing the endless void, her childlike playfulness came back in full force. She placed her hands near her mouth and shouted out as loud as she could in the void, "I've returned. I, Jixiana, have finally returned." Empty space originally had no medium to carry sound waves, but Xiao Moxian was able to use the power of space laws and move space, using space fluctuations as the medium for communication and allowing her voice to travel out for thousands and thousands of miles. Lin Ming and Xiao Moxian had been away from the Divine Realm for around 80 years. During this time, around 20 years was spent in tragic Death Valley. Thus, in the Divine Realm, the truth was that around 60 years had passed. In one parting, so many years had passed. The time that Lin Ming and Xiao Moxian spent in the Azura Road was twice the time they had spent in the Divine Realm. It was no surprise that their reflection upon returning was so intense. However, compared to Xiao Moxian and Lin Ming, there was someone who had an even more intense reaction. That was Mo Bright Moon. She stood in the void of the Divine Realm, familiar with the aura of laws from her homeland. Without sensing it, hot tears filled her eyes. How many years had it been? Even she couldn't remember. But today, she had finally returned to the Divine Realm. She recalled when she had been hunted down by Tian Mingzi. She remembered the scene of when her older sister had sacrificed herself to activate the magic cube. In that moment, her heart ached. In these years, although Mo Bright Moon had searched for her big sister, she never dared to imagine there would come a day when they could meet again. "Lin Ming, you said that my big sister is in Divine Dream Heavenly Palace?" Empyrean Divine Dream had been famous for a long time and Mo Bright Moon naturally knew her great name. Mentioning such a place, Mo Bright Moon was awed. "Yes. We should go to a nearby planet to purchase a star chart. With Primordius Heavenly Palace's speed, it shouldn't take over a month to reach Divine Dream Heavenly Palace." Hearing Lin Ming speak about returning to Divine Dream Heavenly Palace, Xiao Moxian seemed to remember something and she felt as if she lost something important in her heart. Her joy upon returning to the Divine Realm rapidly faded away, leaving her sad and upset. Facing the endless starry skies, Xiao Moxian's eyes blurred as she lost herself in her thoughts. "Miss Xiana, are you okay?" Mo Bright Moon asked with concern, noticing the change in Xiao Moxian. "I'm fine," Xiao Moxian casually responded, unable to summon any energy. Looking at Xiao Moxian's despondent appearance, Lin Ming fell silent, not saying a single word. He naturally knew what Xiao Moxian was thinking. In the past, he and Xiao Moxian were in Bai Chi's grave where they were forced into a dead end by Tian Mingzi. Lin Ming exhausted every method he had and finally won the chance to catch his breath, momentarily escaping into Primordius Heavenly Palace. There, within Primordius Heavenly Palace, he had bet everything on a single throw of the dice and attempted to break into the 9 stars of the Dao Palace. But in the critical moment he had been foiled by Tian Mingzi and nearly failed. Following this, Xiao Moxian ignored all repercussions and recklessly gave her primordial yin to Lin Ming, allowing yin and yang to fuse together. With this, Lin Ming was able to equalize the tyrannical energy from the Grand Mist Spirit Bead essence in his body, and then crush the Heaven and Earth Dao diagram, rushing all the way into the 9 stars of the Dao Palace. At the time, when Xiao Moxian made this decision, she had undergone countless struggles. After all, the demon race and monster race were more inclined towards joining forces with the saints than they were joining forces with humanity. In their estimation, in anyone's estimation, They felt that in this great world calamity it was far more likely the saints would emerge victorious. Even the Empyreans of humanity couldn't help but acknowledge this. If the demon and monster races joined together with the saints, they would inevitably be ranked under them in the future. But this fate was better than being completely annihilated by the saints. Xiao Moxian was a proud daughter of heaven who originated from both the monster race and demon race. It was likely that she would be married off to the good fortune saint Sun in the future. If it was known that she was with Lin Ming, it could be called a betrayal of her people. However, during her days in the Azura Road, Xiao Moxian continued following Lin Ming. As if she were living a wonderful dream, she didn't allow any of those troublesome matters to cloud her mind. Or, perhaps it had been a way for her to escape the chains of her fate. But now she had awakened from her dream and had no choice but to face the brutal reality laid out before her. Lin Ming had to return to Divine Dream Heavenly Palace. As for Xiao Moxian, she had to return to Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace. From this place, they would separate. As for what would happen in the future, Xiao Moxian couldn't imagine it. For a time, Lin Ming and Xiao Moxian were both silent. Lin Ming looked at Xiao Moxian, his eyes recording every curve of her beautiful face. Time seemed to blur as his thoughts returned to Bai Qi's tomb. Those words that Xiao Moxian said to him reverberated in his ears. If you were to die with me here, would you regret it? But Lin Ming, I don't want you to die. I will give you my everything, and when you break through the 9 stars of the Dao Palace and escape from here, you will live on for 1 billion years, 1 trillion years, and my blood will always follow you. Remembering all of this, Lin Ming was filled with emotions. He hesitated for a moment and then opened his mouth to ask, must you go back? If Xiao Moxian were to return, then Lin Ming could imagine that she wouldn't be able to hide what happened between him and her from the demon race and monster race. This was because Xiao Moxian's bloodline was special. She had given her primordial yin to him, and anyone that was specifically probing for this could find out the truth. The atmosphere of the divine realm was originally biased towards being conservative. In the divine realm, there was a high importance placed on the chastity of a woman. In addition to the marriage union with the saints, if all of this were to be discovered, then she would find it difficult to gain a foothold in the monster race or demon race. She would inevitably face tremendous pressure. Lin Ming didn't want to see this occur, thus he asked this question. If Xiao Moxian hid herself in the magic cube space, then no matter how heaven-defying Empyrean Demon Dawn's methods were, he would never be able to find her. But doing so was the same as Xiao Moxian abandoning her people. With her personality, she would never agree to such a thing. And indeed, Xiao Moxian shook her head. Big brother Lin, we must part here. If possible, I will try to change my grandfather's mind. As Xiao Moxian spoke to her, her complexion paled. In truth, saying she would try to change her grandfather's mind was just random words. How could someone like Xiao Moxian change such an important decision of the demon race and monster race? This was a decision that concerned the survival of their 2 races. Lin Ming silently nodded, not speaking. Big brother Lin, if destiny wills it, our paths will cross again. As Xiao Moxian spoke, she threw herself into Lin Ming's chest and deeply kissed him. Then, without pause, her figure flickered and she disappeared from Lin Ming's chest like a dark fairy. She turned into a black beam of light and submerged into the endless darkness. Her slender figure disappeared into the vast starry skies. Lin Ming looked at the direction Xiao Moxian disappeared in, gazing off into the distance for a long time. Beside Lin Ming, Mo Brightmoon was puzzled. She waited for a long time and finally couldn't help but ask, Lin Ming, what is the deal with you and Xiao Moxian? Lin Ming was silent. After a long period of reflection, he began to speak to Mo Brightmoon about his history with Xiao Moxian, his karmic ties to her, the cause and effects of their relationship. Mo Brightmoon listened with a slight frown. She never imagined that this relationship concerned the life and death of different races. To try and overcome the hostility of 2 races for marriage, it was unlikely there would be a good ending, especially for Lin Ming and Xiao Moxian, who would never abandon their races. Mo Brightmoon said, Lin Ming, according to what you said, it will be extremely difficult for you to be together with Xiao Moxian. The only exception is if you are powerful powerful enough that you can interfere in the high-level decisions of the demon and monster races. Listening to Mo Brightmoon's words, Lin Ming wryly smiled. How can I not also understand this truth? But for me to reach that degree of strength, I have no idea how many years or months it will take. At the very least, only when I have the ability to resist a true divinity will my words have power in this great world calamity and be able to influence the decisions of the monster race and demon race. Before then, anything I say is simply empty talk. Lin Ming shook his head over and over. What he needed was strength. Strength to struggle with a true divinity. However, no matter how heaven-defying Lin Ming's talent was, it was impossible for his strength to reach the true divinity realm in hundreds or even thousands of years. He needed to experience an extremely long period of accumulation. Come, let's return to Divine Dream Heavenly Palace. Millimeter, okay. Mo Brightmoon nodded. Because of Lin Ming's matters, her joy of seeing her big sister again was a little diluted. She truly wished from the bottom of her heart that there would be a good ending between Lin Ming and Xiao Moxian. Like this, Lin Ming and Mo Brightmoon used Primordius Heavenly Palace as a spirit ship, rapidly flying through the void. As Lin Ming and Mo Brightmoon were flying towards Divine Dream Heavenly Palace, Xiao Moxian had already returned to Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace. Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace was much closer. Just as she reached the periphery of Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace, before entering, Xiao Moxian discovered a change. And this change caused her to recall something. At once, she felt even more helpless. She darkly sighed. Chapter 1746, Monster Emperor's Grand Longevity Feast. Chapter 1746, Monster Emperor's Grand Longevity Feast. At this time, in front of Xiao Moxian, the entirety of Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace was concealed in a sea of fog. Arranged around the Heavenly Palace were all sorts of great arrays. These great arrays came in numerous colors, and between them were 9 rainbow bridges that spanned thousands of miles. Beneath the brilliant arcs of light, all sorts of wonderful spirit flowers and spirit grasses grew, all of them blooming together in auspicious glory. It was a beautiful sight to behold. All of these spells and array formations were not for defensive purposes but purely for ornamental value. In Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace, a place that was usually shrouded in solemn dignity, they normally wouldn't decorate the area with these types of array formations. If these types of array formations were to appear in Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace, there could only be a single possibility, and it was that there was some grand celebration occurring. As Xiao Moxian considered the time, she suddenly realized that this year was likely the Monster Emperor's Longevity Feast. In the Divine Realm, the various rulers of influences would hold grand birthday feasts, and these events only occurred once every 10,000 years. Every time these longevity feasts were held, it would be done in as grand a manner as possible. These celebrations were not just a symbol of an individual's status, but a manifestation of their respective influences' strength. Xiao Moxian calculated the time. After being in the Azura Road for so long, nearly 60 years had passed in the Divine Realm. It was indeed about time for the Monster Emperor's Longevity Feast to occur. And in these years, because the great calamity was beginning, the Divine Realm was in a perilous state. Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace and the monster race were originally close to begin with, but now they had become even closer. The two influences could be said to have drawn back together in order to protect themselves in these tumultuous times. In this sort of situation, if the Monster Emperor were to hold his longevity feast, Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace would also open array formations, decorating the entire land in festive delights to congratulate the monster race. And during the Monster Emperor's longevity feast, Empyrean Demon Dawn was sure to personally attend. Moreover, the Monster Emperor would invite heroes from all over the world to join in the celebrations. As the proudest daughter of heaven of both the monster race and demon race, Xiao Moxian would naturally represent the younger generation. She would also be the lead junior in the longevity feast. In this situation, it could be imagined just how much attention Xiao Moxian would receive. Whether it was other influences, Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace, or the monster race, all sorts of high-level figures would be looking at her. At that time, it would be even more difficult to conceal what had happened between her and Lin Ming. In this sort of great scene, If it was discovered that her primordial yin had been lost, then it would undoubtedly be a vicious slap to the faces of the monster race and demon race. Her family would lose all honor and her days would not be any better off. After Xiao Moxian saw the changes around Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace, these were all things that she deduced could happen. Xiao Moxian was even thinking of quietly hiding away to avoid the limelight and then return to Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace later. But at this time, her entire body shook. A deep and bass voice sounded out in her ears. "Xiana, you've finally returned. I was very worried about you. It's good that you've returned to us. I have already sent a sound transmission to Imperial Concubine Scarlet to arrange a welcoming reception for you. Return to the palace and rest. 3 days from now I will leave seclusion and you and I will both go to the monster race to congratulate the Monster Emperor at this longevity feast." This dignified voice was filled with a nearly imperceptible gentleness and concern. This was undoubtedly the voice of Empyrean Demon Dawn. As soon as Xiao Moxian appeared at the Demon Dawn Great World, Empyrean Demon Dawn had immediately sensed it. With his incomparably powerful sense and his bloodline relationship with Xiao Moxian, he was the first to notice her arrival. Xiao Moxian had spent so many years at the Azura Road that it would be a lie to say Empyrean Demon Dawn wasn't worried about her. Although he knew that Xiao Moxian had a great destiny upon her, he had been constantly worried until he could see her safely return. Now that she was back, he could finally feel at ease. "Grandfather." Hearing Empyrean Demon Dawn's voice, Xiao Moxian didn't know what sort of taste she felt. She could only try her best to put on a happy smile and say, "I've made grandfather worry over me. Xiana has returned, but I don't need a welcoming reception or anything like that. Grandfather can rest well in seclusion. Haha. This is how we must do things. Since you came back from the Azura Road, this is a major event of my Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace and also a matter that I must inform the entire world of. Then again, in these past days there have been far too many celebratory events and wonderful occasions occurring. It's been far too busy. You take a rest first. 3 days from now I will leave seclusion and you can help me arrange matters about the longevity feast. Later, we will go to the monster race and Monster Concubine Archess will greet us. We'll also hold your welcome celebration then. Haha." Empyrean Demon Dawn happily laughed. But as Xiao Moxian heard this, she felt bitterness swell up in her heart. To her, all of these celebrations were nothing but trouble. If she didn't handle things perfectly, then these celebrations might become a tragedy instead. As for informing the entire world or something like that, this left Xiao Moxian utterly speechless. However, Xiao Moxian was already the preordained future palace master of Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace. Since she returned safely from the Azura Road, this was naturally something that had to be announced to the world so that she could also show off her glory. But to all of this, Xiao Moxian wasn't too worried. What she worried about was that monster concubine Archess. Concubine Archess was not the average person. Archess meant that she was the first, the head of all the imperial concubines. Her status was only inferior to that of the monster empress. Moreover, Xiao Moxian had heard that this concubine Archess possessed a profound cultivation and her plans were deep and intricate. This was how she managed to earn the trust and favor of the monster emperor. This concubine Archess had been specially chosen to manage the gates of the monster race and welcome Empyrean Demon Dawn. Empyrean Demon Dawn was a character on the same level as the Monster Emperor, and if he came to give his birthday greetings, then the Monster Emperor would naturally treat him with the utmost respect and courtesy. Thus, the Monster Emperor had concubine Archess especially receive Empyrean Demon Dawn to show off the close relationship between the monster race and demon race. It wouldn't be easy for Xiao Moxian to hide the truth from this woman. Moreover, in the future, as more and more grand figures arrived, wanting to hide the truth from all of these people would be increasingly difficult. If she was discovered, especially in front of the monster race. Thinking of this, Xiao Moxian took a deep breath. If she really couldn't conceal matters, then the only option was to be open and honest and confess everything to Empyrean Demon Dawn. But doing so would lead to her confinement in her room and it would no longer be possible for her to communicate with Lin Ming. But this was a better choice than to be found out on the day of the longevity feast. If that happened, the situation would be even worse, and even Lin Ming would be forced to stand atop the precipice and be denounced by everyone. However, as she thought that she would have to be parted from Lin Ming like this, Xiao Moxian immediately lost all spirit to do anything. She looked at Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace. No matter how wonderfully colored the array formations were, how brilliant the rainbows and dazzling mists of light, how enchanting all the world treasures there were, all she felt was loneliness and suffering. She had always been a free and easy individual. But now she had to worry about the reputation of her chastity, as well as the major events that were happening within her race. All of this meant inevitable headaches, worrying over the outcome of what would happen. I have 3 days. I must make use of this time to restore as much of my primordial yin energy as I can so no one can see anything. As Xiao Moxian was thinking this, she flew towards Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace. At this time, a group of people flew out from Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace, led by a beautiful woman. Behind this woman were several dozen nubile maids. This beautiful woman was Empyrean Demon Dawn's favored concubine. She had come out especially to greet Xiao Moxian. Congratulations, miss, for returning from the Azura Road and becoming stronger yet again. The beautiful woman was all smiles. Although she was Xiao Moxian's elder, her words faintly took Xiao Moxian as the one to be respected. This was a reasonable matter. Xiao Moxian possessed an extremely high status in Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace. If juniors saw her, they had to bow, and even many elders had to flatter and treat her well. I've troubled Auntie Scarlet. You even came out to meet me. Xiao Moxian suppressed the worry in her heart and put on her best cute and lovable smile. With her cultivation, it was naturally easy to hide the truth from these people who possessed a low cultivation. Miss is too polite. Just what sort of words are those? By all reasoning, we should have sent a team of people to greet you as soon as you returned to the divine realm. However, you were also a bit hasty. How could you return to the divine realm so quickly and not inform us beforehand? I would have been able to prepare a lavish feast for your arrival. Unfortunately, the entire Heavenly Palace is preparing for the Monster Emperor's longevity feast right now, so there isn't enough manpower to prepare your welcome reception. The beautiful maid smiled as she spoke. As for the maids beside her, they helped drape a phoenix cloak around Xiao Moxian and led her into a jade bird carriage where they slowly flew back to Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace. As they flew back, the jade bird carriage was buffeted by strong astral winds. For some reason, Xiao Moxian felt a bit dizzy. She held onto her forehead, feeling a little hot. Miss, are you all right? The beautiful woman discovered that Xiao Moxian was acting a bit strangely, thus she asked a question in worry. It looked as if Xiao Moxian was feeling uncomfortable. I'm fine. Xiao Moxian gently smiled, also a bit puzzled herself. This sort of feeling was like a mortal having a cold. Of course, to such a strong martial artist like Xiao Moxian, suffering from something like a common cold was nothing more than a joke. The pressure must be too great. Xiao Moxian took a deep breath. There was indeed a tremendous deal of pressure on her mind. Could this be causing the true essence in her inner world to flow turbulently? Xiao Moxian explained the situation to herself like this and then forgot about it. This is probably because Miss has been tired out from adventuring through the Azura Road. With so many battles, you surely must have consumed too much energy. Now that you've returned to the divine realm and are able to relax, it's inevitable you will feel tired. The beautiful woman thought about matters and gave an explanation she also thought was reasonable. Xiao Moxian only gave a perfunctory smile. Upon returning to Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace, many maids and disciples had already received the news of Xiao Moxian's return and were preparing to welcome her. They spread petals on the floor and sprinkled purifying water along her path. Under the accompaniment of over 10 palace maids, Xiao Moxian arrived at 9 Phoenix Pond to bathe and change her clothes. Afterwards, with Xiao Moxian refusing everything, she pushed back all plans for an evening dinner. She used the excuse that she was tired and retired to her room. The comfortable silk sheets and large bed didn't arouse Xiao Moxian's drowsiness. She immediately sat down in meditation and began to revolve the heaven and earth origin energy within herself. She had to gather as much primordial yin energy as she could in these 3 days so that Empyrean Demon Dawn, the monster race, and the other powerhouses wouldn't be able to discover anything. After 2 nirvanas, Xiao Moxian's primordial yin energy had restored a little. But because she then dual cultivated with Lin Ming, it was inevitable that it would be affected once again. Of course, while passing her primordial yin to Lin Ming, she had also obtained an extremely powerful pure yang energy from him. This pure yang energy originally allowed Xiao Moxian to reach yin-yang harmony. To her, it was extremely beneficial. This was the significance behind dual cultivation. But now Xiao Moxian had to suppress this pure yang energy, sealing it in the depths of her inner world. Otherwise, it would expose her secret. Slowly, her primordial yin energy began to grow. As for the pure yang energy, it was gradually sealed up. But for some unknown reason, Xiao Moxian felt as if she was easily tired. Just relaxing a little, she felt her strength constantly passing away from her. Moreover, as she sat in meditation adjusting her breath, she fell dizzy several times. This caused her to feel that there was something strange occurring within her. Chapter 1747, Xiao Moxian's Worries. Chapter 1747, Xiao Moxian's Worries. What is wrong with me? Sitting in meditation, Xiao Moxian opened her eyes. She found that she was wet with sweat and even her forehead was covered with beads of sweat. This was not due to tiredness from meditation, but because of weakness. Her body was weakening, causing her to sweat. What is happening? Xiao Moxian's eyebrows pressed together. At such a critical moment, how could she encounter such a strange occurrence? With Xiao Moxian's cultivation and strength, although she couldn't fight Lin Ming in a head-on battle, that was only compared to him. Amongst others of her generation, Xiao Moxian was a crane amongst chickens. No one could hope to be her opponent. Along with the pure yang energy she had absorbed from Lin Ming and her heaven-defying half-phoenix body, her blood vitality was extremely powerful. Let alone sitting in meditation for an entire day, she could easily handle fighting all day and all night. But now, the more she sat in meditation, the more tired she became. All of the strength she gathered was slowly weakened. No, there's something wrong with my body. As she recalled the dizziness she felt when she rode in the carriage, Xiao Moxian was increasingly confident that there was some problem with her body. One time could be called an accident, but it was impossible for repeated cases to be a coincidence. There was absolutely something wrong here. She quickly investigated her body, probing her meridians, flesh and blood, organs, and even spiritual sea. There were no problems with any of them. Only in her inner world were there some differences. Xiao Moxian was surprised to find that within her inner world, there was a strange vortex slowly absorbing all of the origin energy within her. Generally speaking, a martial artist's inner world was a whole world, in other words a seamless world. It was impossible for a leaking point to exist. But now, it seemed as if there had been a hole poked within Xiao Moxian's inner world. A massive amount of origin energy was continually passing out from this hole. And as this origin energy passed out, it didn't completely disappear but stayed within her body. It didn't affect her cultivation, only making it so that she couldn't summon this strength. How could this be? Xiao Moxian panicked a little. She was not in the mood for such a joke to be played on her right now. Every bit of cultivation was important to her and she needed to use all of it to condense her primordial yin energy and suppress the pure yang energy within her. If there was a problem with her cultivation, the chances of her being exposed were even greater. What is this vortex? Just how is it absorbing and confining my power? It is the aftermath of having absorbed the undying inferno? Xiao Moxian immediately thought, startled. If the undying inferno's soul wasn't extinguished, then perhaps it might be thinking of wresting away her strength and stealing her body. This was not a minor matter at all. Thinking of this, Xiao Moxian raised her vigilance to the limit and immediately locked onto this vortex within her mind, ready to engage the undying inferno in a brutal battle in her spiritual sea at any moment. However, Xiao Moxian soon discovered that the situation was completely different from what she had thought. The vortex had a gentle atmosphere, completely different from the tyrannical and cruel aura of the undying inferno. Faintly, Xiao Moxian could even feel something akin to her flesh and blood in this vortex, as if there was some small and weak soul calling out to her. She had no idea why, but this feeling left Xiao Moxian moved. A deep sense of tender love began growing in her heart, as if this little soul in the vortex was more important than her life. This sort of feeling was beyond description, but was still ingrained into her very bones. This is. Xiao Moxian was stunned. On her bed, she wasn't able to respond for a long time. After confirming the situation several times and re-examining her body, verifying her acupoints, checking her bloodline and meridian channels, she finally understood what had happened. This so-called vortex was in truth a small and immature soul. And for such a soul to appear within her, there was only a single explanation. Her dual cultivation with Lin Ming had resulted in her pregnancy. This vortex, the energy mass within it, was her and Lin Ming's child. I actually have a child. At this moment, an indescribable feeling filled Xiao Moxian's heart. She felt as if all her thoughts were drowned in a fog, her entire mind turning blank. Before this, Xiao Moxian had never made any preparations to ward against pregnancy. This was because the more powerful a race was, the more difficult it was for them to become pregnant. Moreover, Xiao Moxian was a half-phoenix and she was of a completely different race from Lin Ming. If they wanted to produce a living crystallization of their love, that was something that might not happen even after countless hardships and attempts. It was possible that there might not be any children between them for the rest of their lives. But she never imagined that after she left the Azura Road, she would find out she was pregnant. This happiness had come far too suddenly. Originally, she had already mentally prepared herself to never have any children in her life. In the Azura Road, whenever she thought of this matter, she would feel pain in her heart. For a woman to not be able to have a child with the man she loved most, this sort of regret could be imagined. To hold her and Lin Ming's child in her arms, this was something that Xiao Moxian yearned for in her dreams. And now her dream had suddenly come true. But what followed the arrival of this happiness was endless worry. This child had come at the worst time possible. Whether it was her or Lin Ming, both of them were too weak right now and neither had the ability to change the course of the world. It wasn't even known if they could be together in the future. Moreover, within this upcoming grand calamity, the birth of this child would involve the survival of many races. To this unborn child, such a heavy fate was far too cruel. How could this be? Xiao Moxian rubbed her stomach, a strange taste in her mouth. Joy, happiness, sorrow, worry, all sorts of moods passed through her, making it impossible for her to feel at ease. But what was without a doubt was that with her pregnancy, it would be far more difficult to conceal her affairs with Lin Ming. Luckily, there was a single point to rejoice, and this was that the child within her was not ordinary at all. She wouldn't have a pregnancy like a mortal would, gathering natal energy and giving birth after 10 months. If that happened, then she really would be seen through. Xiao Moxian had a special physique and Lin Ming also had all sorts of strange bloodlines in his body. Not only did he have the blood of a phoenix and dragon within him, but he also possessed a drop of Azura blood. Compared to the bloodlines of a dragon or phoenix, this sort of bloodline was incomparably more precious. Whether it was Xiao Moxian or Lin Ming, they both possessed a heaven-defying talent and divine body. Currently, the child formed between them was only the purest group of blood essence. Its growth would be an extremely slow process that would continue for dozens of years. Even hundreds of years passing before birth wouldn't be strange at all. But during this period, this child was already able to substantialize in the inner world of its parent and commune with the surrounding heaven and earth origin energy. It's either good fortune or disaster, and if it's disaster then it cannot be avoided. As Xiao Moxian said this, she clenched her teeth and sat back down in meditation, continuing to accumulate her primordial yin energy. With things having reached this step, she could only walk forwards one step at a time, taking things as they came. Even though there was only the slimmest chance of making it through this, Xiao Moxian had to furiously struggle for it. Right now, she absolutely could not honestly speak to Empyrean Demon Dawn about her and Lin Ming's matters. If she wasn't pregnant, then if she frankly spoke of her relationship with Lin Ming to Empyrean Demon Dawn, the most he would have done was confine her to her room and cut off all communications she could have with Lin Ming. But now that she was pregnant, if Empyrean Demon Dawn or the monster race were to find out, it was hard to imagine what fate this child would suffer. If this child suffered any accident, to Xiao Moxian, that would be the cruelest thing in the world. She would rather die than have anything happen to her child. Thinking of this, Xiao Moxian couldn't help but grip her chest. She found it difficult to breathe. During this longevity feast, in front of all the great characters of the divine realm and possibly even representatives of the saints, if her pregnancy was to be revealed, Xiao Moxian didn't dare to imagine the consequences. Even her fingers began to shiver. If such an occurrence were to truly occur, if the monster and demon races still chose to ally with the saints, then this child would become the shame of the monster and demon races. They would definitely decide to kill it before it was born. Drops of sweat began to run down Xiao Moxian's fingertips. She was afraid. She was truly, truly afraid. A chill crossed her body and even her arms and legs felt ice cold. But at this time, she could faintly feel the small life within her suddenly send out a call. This was a call that came from the soul. Inexplicably, this call warmed Xiao Moxian, as if at that moment courage had bloomed in her heart. At the longevity feast, if she were indeed exposed, even if everyone within the divine realm were to ridicule and mock her, even if they all pointed at her, even if Empyrean Demon Dawn and the monster race were furious with her, Xiao Moxian wouldn't care at all. However, if someone dared to move against the child in her belly, if her grandfather didn't care about their familial love, then she could only threaten them with her death. As Xiao Moxian was filled with countless worries, Lin Ming had arrived at Divine Dream Heavenly Palace. The phantasmal and ethereal Divine Dream Heavenly Palace remained unchanged from 60 years ago. Mo Bright Moon looked at the magnificent Jade Palace, finding it hard to remain calm. According to what Lin Ming had told her, her big sister was in this palace. Chapter 1748, Greeting Divine Dream. Chapter 1748, Greeting Divine Dream. For 50,000 years, Mo Bright Moon had been constantly worried over her big sister. She used all sorts of ways and means to find her, but just how vast was the divine realm and the 3,000 boundless worlds of the lower realms? To look for a single person, that couldn't even be called something as simple as finding a needle in a haystack. In addition, there was also Tian Mingzi. His existence forced Mo Bright Moon to hide her status, making her search even more fruitless. Big Sister is actually cultivating at Divine Dream Heavenly Palace. I wonder just what realm her strength has reached. Mo Bright Moon was happy for her big sister from the depths of her heart. She also took joy in the fact that her big sister had met Lin Ming. And at this time, several white-clothed women flew out from Divine Dream Heavenly Palace, welcoming Lin Ming and Mo Bright Moon. Sir Lin, Honorable Master invites your presence. The white-clothed woman in the lead had a world king cultivation. In Divine Dream Heavenly Palace, there were only a mere several hundred disciples. Compared to the super-large influences of the divine realm who often had 100 billion plus disciples and clansmen, their numbers simply weren't worth mentioning at all. However, the disciples of Divine Dream Heavenly Palace were the elites amongst all proud daughters of heaven. The disciples who came here, as long as they grew up, would reach a half-step world king cultivation at the barest minimum. Lin Ming and Mo Bright Moon followed these disciples and flew into Divine Dream Heavenly Palace. And just as they passed through the grand gates of Divine Dream Heavenly Palace, Lin Ming saw a blue-clothed woman hurriedly racing over. This woman had just received the news in her seclusion room and had rushed over to meet Lin Ming. Seeing this blue-clothed woman appear, Mo Bright Moon froze where she was. There was no need to guess, no need to doubt. Almost instantly, she was able to confirm that this woman who she had actually never seen before was her big sister Mo Eversnow. Because Mo Eversnow and Lin Ming had been forced into the blood slaughter steps, her soul had then fused with the mortal body of the deeply slumbering goddess. Now, her appearance was considerably different from how she was 50,000 years ago. But because they were sisters, because of the strange soul resonance between them, Mo Bright Moon was able to recognize Mo Eversnow. And at this time, Mo Eversnow also saw Mo Bright Moon. Her body shook and her beautiful eyes opened wide as she looked at Mo Bright Moon with an inconceivable expression. She froze where she was. Just now when Mo Eversnow had learned that Lin Ming had returned, she didn't care about what breakthroughs Lin Ming had made or how much his strength had increased. All she worried about was whether Lin Ming had suffered heavy wounds or whether there were hidden injuries left in him. But she never imagined that Lin Ming would return with a woman, and this woman was clearly her younger sister, Mo Bright Moon. Big sister, it's me. Little Moon. A rough and bumpy road of 50,000 years, Mo Bright Moon had withstood unimaginable pressure and experienced endless sorrows. And the instant Mo Bright Moon saw Mo Eversnow, all of these tightly wound emotions burst out from her. Mo Bright Moon threw herself at her big sister, hugging her tightly as tears welled up. At this time, there was no need for words. As the two sisters tightly held each other, it was as if their hearts and minds had already merged. Seeing this scene, Lin Ming revealed a happy smile. On this day, Mo Eversnow's most ardent goals and wishes could be said to have come to a perfect conclusion. Now all that was left was to rebuild the verdant Feather Holy Lands. To the current Lin Ming and Mo Eversnow, this wasn't a difficult matter at all. It would simply be a question of time. Lin Ming quietly drew back. He followed the white-clothed woman to greet Empyrean Divine Dream. As for the two sisters, he didn't want to disturb their emotional reunion. After passing through several winding corridors, the white-clothed woman pushed open a leafed door. The moment this leafed door was opened, a shocking scene was revealed behind it. Behind this door was an incomparably vast world. Countless celestial mountains floated high above a sea of clouds. Lush green spirit plants grew everywhere, and even spiritual springs and rivers fell down from the mountains in waterfalls, cascading into the world like limitless threads of white silk. Among these numerous celestial mountains, there was a floating plain. This plain resembled a mountain that had its top half sheared off, revealing a completely smooth tract of land. And above this plain, there was a simple bamboo house. Thick and luxurious grass grew tall with the natural fragrance of bamboo everywhere. Lin Ming fell down in front of this bamboo house. As he did, he saw a white-clothed woman in front of it, gathering the nectar of flowers. Her appearance resembled that of a young woman in her 20s. This nectar was condensed from rich heaven and earth origin energy and was also produced from these spiritual plants. To a martial artist, it was similar to milk from 10,000-year stalactites. This was Immortal Spring's divine water, and whether it was for refining pills or drinking, it was extremely beneficial. Junior Lin Ming pays his respects to Senior Divine Dream. Lin Ming respectfully bowed. Towards this leader of humanity in his eyes, Lin Ming had always held the deepest reverence and awe. Divine Dream looked at Lin Ming and smiled. She lightly said, 58 years, 6 months, and 12 days. You've finally returned. Divine Dream calmly stated the exact duration of Lin Ming's journey in the Azura Road, leaving him startled. Although an Empyrean had an extremely accurate memory, for her to speak out this time proved that she had been worried about his progress in the Azura Road smelting trial. Half-step Holy Lord. Very good. Divine Dream was pleasantly surprised as she noted Lin Ming's cultivation. This degree of cultivation had surpassed her original estimations. When Lin Ming first entered the Azura Road, he had only been at the middle divine transformation realm. Now, he had grown by an entire large realm and a half. Moreover, from glancing over Lin Ming's inner world, she could see that his foundation was solid and his combat strength was definitely extraordinary. Lin Ming responded. Junior stumbled into a strange mystic realm in the Azura Road. Within, time flowed at a rate 10 times faster than the outside. However, what was most mysterious was that although the flow of time was changed, the world laws remained unaltered so that one could cultivate normally within. Junior stayed inside for 20 years, so in truth I have cultivated for 80 years. Adding on to the many fortuitous encounters and lucky chances I obtained, I managed to reach the half-step Holy Lord realm. Oh, there is such a place. Divine Dream was startled. To establish an independent space and change the flow of time, it was inevitable that the laws would be twisted. She didn't think that such a wonderfully strange land existed in the Azura Road. 80 years to become a half-step Holy Lord is still more than astonishing. Lin Ming, through your adventures in the Azura Road, your harvests have truly been great this time. Your battle with the good fortune Saint Sun that he agreed to was in 100 years, so you still have more than 40 years remaining. You must focus on your training so that after the period of 100 years is over, there can be a battle to decide just who is stronger and who is weaker. Originally, when Lin Ming agreed to fight the good fortune Saint Sun in 100 years, no one favored his chances of victory. The saints had jeered at him, labeling him an idiot, and even the human Empyreans felt that Lin Ming had been too rash. Empyrean Divine Dream also had her concerns and apprehensions about this matter. At that time, Lin Ming had only been at the Divine Transformation realm, whereas the good fortune Saint Sun was about to break into the Saint Lord realm. The disparity could be imagined. And now, Lin Ming had finally caught up to the good fortune Saint Sun's boundary from 60 years ago. However, during these 60 years, the good fortune Saint Sun had also made considerable progress. This was the reason why Empyrean Divine Dream had said these words, so that Lin Ming would take advantage of the 40 years he had remaining and practice wholeheartedly. In response to Empyrean Divine Dream's words, Lin Ming remained quiet, not saying anything. Empyrean Divine Dream continued, Lin Ming, according to what I know, the good fortune Saint Sun has also made great strides in his cultivation these past years. Do not forget, he has the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. The Grand Mist Spirit Bead was one of the most precious treasures in existence. It was unimaginably beneficial to a body transformation martial artist. Although Lin Ming possessed the magic cube that was not inferior to the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, what he focused on were the two great systems of body transformation and essence gathering. As for the magic cube, it was a divine tool of the soul. Although the magic cube was also extremely beneficial to Lin Ming, it still couldn't directly increase his cultivation. As for the good fortune Saint Sun, he could use the Grand Mist Spirit Bead to temper his body. From this point alone, the good fortune Saint Sun had an overwhelming advantage over Lin Ming. Lin Ming didn't doubt that if the good fortune Saint Sun were to return to the final trial, he would definitely surpass a completion rate of 81%. He was truly a formidable opponent. However, no matter how strong the good fortune Saint Sun was, Lin Ming had complete confidence in himself. This was because as his strength rose in the Azura Road, his cultivation was only responsible for a tiny part of it. No one was able to look at him and discern the increase in his hidden strength. Not to mention the two heaven-defying lucky chances of the Azura blood and the Azura heavenly Tao, just opening 2 of the Tao palaces from the 9 stars of the Tao palace had increased Lin Ming's true cultivation far past that of a half-step holy lord. And concerning the 9 stars of the Tao palace that had nearly completely vanished from the 33 heavenly Taos, besides Empyrean Primordius, there was no one that could recognize it. That's right, after several months, it will be time for the Monster Emperor's Grand Longevity Feast. The monster race has publicized this longevity feast throughout the world, and I have also received a letter of invitation. If you do not have any other matters to attend to, then go together with me. This time, the ones that the monster race has invited are not just the demon race and human race. Divine Dream's voice was light and casual, as if she was speaking about some minor matter. But Lin Ming could hear the meaning behind her words. Not only had the monster race invited the demons and humans, but they undoubtedly also invited a third race, the saint. For the Monster Emperor's Grand Longevity Feast, even the saints were invited. The implicit meaning of such an action was obvious. The monster race had invited Empyrean Divine Dream and the great figures of humanity as a courtesy and part of proper etiquette. It was impossible not to invite them. But inviting the saints was irrelevant to any sense of courtesy. After all, the saints were invaders to this world and not inviting them was normal. But the monster race had purposefully invited these invaders. This meant that with the monsters and saints, even if they hadn't formed an alliance, their relationship wasn't bad. If there wasn't an accident, then the Monster Emperor's Grand Longevity Feast would be a time for the saints to demonstrate their might. The saints would take this opportunity to show off their strength and possibly even reveal their alliance with the demon and monster races, dealing humanity a giant psychological blow. The saints were originally far stronger than the human race. If the demon and monster races were to defect to the saints, then before the great calamity fully arrived, all the human martial artists might have lost what little confidence they had. But even in this situation where she clearly knew what would happen at the longevity feast, Empyrean Divine Dream would still go, and she would also bring the strongest lineup with her to contend with the saints and their demonstration of their might. On the surface, Lin Ming was the #1 young heroic elite of humanity. He would naturally have an indispensable role. Thus, although Empyrean Divine Dream had been seeking Lin Ming's opinion and asking if he wanted to go together, the truth was that Lin Ming knew he couldn't decline, otherwise it would weaken humanity's momentum. Monster race, that is also the homeland of Xiao Moxian's mother. I too want to take a look and see what the monster race is like. Thinking like this, Lin Ming said, Junior has no other matters to attend to. I may accompany Senior Divine Dream to go together. Millimeter, good. Empyrean Divine Dream nodded in satisfaction. But, there is also one more thing I must mention. For the Monster Emperor's Grand Longevity Feast, it is within reason for the good fortune Saint's son to be invited. Without accident, you will meet him there. If he tries to taunt you, you must not fall for his tricks and come into conflict with him. Remember, you still have around 42 years of time to prepare for your fated battle. Do not fall for his provocations. I have heard that the good fortune Saint's son has recently made an important breakthrough in his martial arts and has finally practiced the 5th level of the good fortune divine art. Chapter 1749, Towards the Monster Race. Chapter 1749, Towards the Monster Race. Oh, the 5th level of the good fortune divine art? Lin Ming asked, curious. Although he was confident in facing the good fortune Saint's son, it was always best to have a better understanding of the enemy. Yes, this good fortune divine art is a top cultivation method created by the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Its rank even surpasses that of a transcendent divine might. In other words, it is a true divinity cultivation method. Even my divine dream law is lacking. This cultivation method is incredibly difficult to learn and cultivate. Even if an Empyrean tried, they would suffer layers upon layers of troubles. But, the good fortune Saint's son was able to cultivate it to the 5th level. My guess is that the Grand Mist Spirit Bead played a considerable role in this. Empyrean Divine Dream said, sighing. With the Grand Mist Spirit Bead in his possession, whether it was the good fortune Saint's son's cultivation ability or combat prowess, everything would be even more formidable. In addition to his originally heaven-defying talent, it would be far too difficult for a junior of humanity to surpass him. To the geniuses of the human race, this wasn't a fair battle to begin with. Only Lin Ming had a chance of comparing to him, but unfortunately, Lin Ming was just far younger than the good fortune Saint's son was. 40 years from now the day of your decisive battle with the good fortune Saint's son will arrive. You must be careful. This good fortune divine art can move the power of good fortune itself. Its might is beyond imagination. Empyrean Divine Dream cautioned. Lin Ming nodded. Yes, this junior understands. Time passed. Soon, 3 months flew by. The Monster Emperor's longevity feast would start in just several days. At this time, in the endless starry skies, a pitch-black giant spirit ship slowly flew through the air. This spirit ship was several 100,000 feet long. As it flew through space, it resembled a massive ancient beast. In this spirit ship, within a grand hall, Xiao Moxian stood behind a porthole. She was garbed in an elegant dress as she looked out, unspeaking. At this time, she was going to the monster race to celebrate the Monster Emperor's longevity feast. Xiana, what are you thinking of? Behind Xiao Moxian, a low and deep voice rang out. And as soon as she heard this voice, Xiao Moxian's thoughts froze and her fingers faintly shivered. She let out a light breath and suppressed her racing heart. Slowly turning around, she put on a happy smile and said, Grandfather. Behind Xiao Moxian stood a large middle-aged man. He was over a head taller than an average man and his shoulders were extremely wide and strong. His forehead was sharp, as if it had been carved by sabers. He wore a black robe and cloak. As the hem of the cloak dragged along the ground, it exuded a mystic and dignified atmosphere. This person was Empyrean Demon Dawn. Amongst Empyreans, he was a peak existence. Looking at the entire divine realm, the number of people who surpassed him in strength could be counted on one hand. Facing Empyrean Demon Dawn, Xiao Moxian was certainly flustered. Before this she had already been called to see Empyrean Demon Dawn several times. Xiao Moxian had to summon all of her will and martial arts skills in order to conceal what had happened. This was thanks to the fact that Xiao Moxian had crossed 2 nirvanas and restored some of the primordial yin energy within her. In addition to her isolating her inner world, the changes didn't seem too great. After undergoing her 2 nirvanas, whether it was in terms of aura or the nirvanic flames within her, she was much stronger than before. Empyrean Demon Dawn would have been able to instantly see through all of this. But because Xiao Moxian was pregnant, it made it look as if her aura wasn't powerful at all. Rather, it appeared as if she had weakened. Thus even now, Empyrean Demon Dawn didn't know that Xiao Moxian had undergone 2 nirvanas. Instead, he felt it was strange. After Xiao Moxian ventured through the Azura Road and her cultivation increased by a considerable amount, how come her foundation seemed ordinary and even sloppy? It was because of this reason that Empyrean Demon Dawn had carefully and repeatedly urged Xiao Moxian to not increase her cultivation at the cost of her foundation. Xiana, your aura seems to be a bit chaotic. Empyrean Demon Dawn had extremely sharp senses. He could faintly feel that there was something wrong with the origin energy flowing throughout Xiao Moxian. I'm fine, grandfather. I probably spent too much time in the Azura Road. The world laws are different there and I had adapted to them. Now that I've come back to the divine realm, I'm not used to it, so that caused some disorder in the heaven and earth origin energy within my inner world. I'll be fine with some more time. Xiao Moxian lied, coming up with some excuse. Millimeter, the laws of the Azura Road are truly different and the heaven and earth origin energy there is different from in the divine realm. Empyrean Demon Dawn nodded, accepting Xiao Moxian's explanation. Although Empyrean Demon Dawn had discovered there was something strange with Xiao Moxian these past days, he didn't think it was because she was pregnant. Rather, he would never have guessed in his wildest dreams that it was because she was pregnant. This was because in his eyes, this little granddaughter of his was a naturally haughty and proud individual. Let alone something as ridiculous as being pregnant, even her dedicating her love and attention towards a man was an incredibly difficult matter. Thinking of this, Empyrean Demon Dawn faintly frowned. He suddenly remembered a marriage proposal that the saints kept suggesting. Of course, for this he wanted to ask Xiao Moxian's opinion. If Xiao Moxian didn't like the good fortune saint's son at all, how could this marriage be carried out? Xiana, I want to ask you about the good fortune saint's son. What do you think of him? As Empyrean Demon Dawn asked this question, Xiao Moxian nearly jumped up where she stood. She definitely knew why he had asked this question. She decisively shook her head and said, I don't like him at all. After being directly cut off by Xiao Moxian, Empyrean Demon Dawn didn't have the chance to say the good words about the good fortune saint's son he wanted to say afterwards. He helplessly frowned and said, well, all right, you rest for a while first. After an incense stick of time will arrive at the monster race. This year, the Monster Emperor's Longevity Feast is an extremely important event. If you are still feeling ill, I can help you take a look and see what is afflicting you. Thank you, grandfather, but I'm fine. Xiao Moxian quickly refused. If Empyrean Demon Dawn were to probe her inner world, the results could be imagined. She feared that once this happened, she absolutely would not be able to conceal the truth any longer. Millimeter, okay. Empyrean Demon Dawn nodded and turned to leave. Xiao Moxian let out a long breath of relief. She turned towards the porthole, feeling her hands and palms wet with sweat. And at this time, outside of the porthole, she could see that the spirit ship had already arrived on a mainland. This mainland was covered with vast verdant forests. The trees were thousands of feet high and would take several hundred people to encircle them. The monster beasts raised within these massive forests were extremely terrifying. This was the territory of the monster race. Faintly, deep in a forest, Xiao Moxian could make out a city of the monster race. Within the sprawling city there was a massive black pagoda that seemed as if it was holding up the skies. This was the heaven-lifting black pagoda where the monster emperor dwelled. After an incense stick of time, the black spirit ship slowly descended towards this heaven-supporting pagoda. The black spirit ship was hundreds of thousands of feet long, but in front of the heaven-lifting black pagoda, it seemed like a fly buzzing around a tree, simply not worthy of mention at all. The spirit ship steadily descended. Empyrean Demon Dawn and Xiao Morxian both flew down, accompanied by many attendants. And beneath the spirit ship, thousands of monster disciples were already lined up in a procession, waiting. The one leading them was a beautiful woman dressed in a coat of white fox fur. This was monster concubine Arches. The moment Xiao Morxian saw monster concubine Arches, she tightened her inner world and restrained her aura. But she kept a cute and lovable smile on her face at all times, remaining completely calm throughout. Junior Xiao Morxian greets concubine Arches. Xiao Morxian greeted in the manner of a junior. Humph. Monster concubine Arches snorted. She was utterly respectful towards Empyrean Demon Dawn, but towards Xiao Morxian, there was even a hint of disrespect in her tone. Xiao Morxian was stunned. She didn't know just what monster concubine Arches meant by this. Xiao Morxian's thoughts raced, a strange feeling coming over her. She felt that monster concubine Arches was extremely unfriendly towards her, and even her eyes were as sharp as swords. It made Xiao Morxian feel as if she had been seen through. How did I offend her? Xiao Morxian thought, puzzled. At the same time, she was even more careful in concealing her aura. She had an extremely bad feeling of foreboding. And as Xiao Morxian and Empyrean Demon Dawn arrived at the monster race, there was also another spirit ship flying towards the monster race's world. This spirit ship wasn't overly large, but it shimmered with a clear radiance, as if it were carved from the finest crystal. On the side of this spirit ship was a mysterious symbol. This was a word of an ancient language in the divine realm, meaning dream. The spirit ship naturally belonged to Divine Dream Heavenly Palace. With the arrival of the Monster Emperor's longevity feast, Lin Ming accompanied Empyrean Divine Dream to go to the monster race's world. During the Monster Emperor's longevity feast, I should be able to see Xiana. I wonder how she's been doing in Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace. Xiao Morxian would definitely participate in the Monster Emperor's longevity feast. Lin Ming was a little worried about how she was doing. The good fortune Saint's son, he really came. At this time, Empyrean Divine Dream's voice echoed out in Lin Ming's ears. Looking out a porthole, Lin Ming could see that several hundred miles away, there was a giant floating fortress. This fortress was bright silver all over and covered with sharp spikes. It looked extremely fierce. This is the good fortune Saint's son's transportation? Lin Ming's pupils shrank. Empyrean Divine Dream nodded. Chapter 1750, Gathering of Greats. Chapter 1750, Gathering of Greats. The ancient monster race had existed since time immemorial. In the divine realm, the monster race wasn't too powerful. Compared to humanity, they were considered small and weak. However, the monster race wasn't limited to just the divine realm. Within the other universes of the 33 heavens there also existed the monster race. According to legend, the monster race was an ancient race that had existed 10 billion years ago and had continued spreading out. 10 billion years ago, the three great races of humans, saints, and spiriters were by no means the rulers of the world. Rather, they could be called extremely weak and small races. The ones who ruled in that era were the various ancient races. The kings of these ancient races could destroy the heavens and annihilate the earth just by raising their hands. And in that time when many ancient god kings existed together, the monster race's unrivaled monster emperor was equally able to dominate his own region. However, as time passed, far too many great elites and supreme elders rose up from the ranks of the ancient races. These powerful figures started countless wars, and whenever the god-lamenting war weakened, the entire 33 heavens would be drowned in the flames of war. Yet there was nothing that could withstand the erosion of time. Slowly, the ancient races declined. The monster race was far luckier, at least they survived until the present. And now for the last several billions of years, the 33 heavens had become the world of the spiriters, saints, and humans. But as more time passed, of these three great races, humanity also began to slowly decline. In particular, in the Great Calamity 6 billion years ago humanity had suffered a catastrophic attack. Only the divine realm, under the leadership of Empyrean Divine Seal, had been able to obtain an arduous victory, managing to continue until now. Of course, in the eyes of the saints, humanity was barely managing to hold on to a feeble and pathetic existence. The annihilation of humanity was only a matter of time. At this time, in the massive silver fortress, a tall youth in white robes was reclining in a luxurious chair. A glazed wine glass was in his hands, gently dangling and swaying. Within the wine glass the bright red liquid rippled, looking like blood. Beneath the white-robed youth, a beautiful maid draped in the thinnest silks was kneeling on the ground, massaging his legs with even and strong strokes. From her rhythm it was clear she was extremely skilled at this. This white-robed youth was the good fortune saint's son. Humanity. A dark and playful smile appeared on the good fortune saint's son's face. He drank the rest of the wine, a bit of the red liquid dripping down the corners of his lips and making him look fierce. To allow you to linger on for 3-6 billion years, it's about time for your era to come to an end. As for the monster and demon races, if you obey me then there will still be a small place for you to stand and assist my people. Otherwise, your fate will be the same as the humans. As the good fortune saint's son spoke, there was a cracking sound as the glazed wine glass in his hands was crushed to shards. The good fortune saint's son rose up. His cloak fell down and the maid at his feet also quickly bowed her head to the floor. The good fortune saint's son strode towards a porthole. At this time, outside the porthole, he could see countless spirit ships in the air. These spirit ships carried heroes and elites from all over that the monster race had invited. Amongst the many spirit ships, giant monsters stood up around the heaven-lifting black pagoda. All around the heaven-lifting black pagoda flew flood dragons, blue lwans, and many other spirit beasts that had bloodline relations to god beasts. These spirit beasts were all raised by the monster race. The monster race were not lacking such spirit beast. The monster race even had true god beasts in their ranks. And these god beasts had often already cultivated to the boundary where they could take human form. Those with poorer bloodlines were inferior to Empyreans, but there were also god beasts with top royal bloodlines that were second only to the monster emperor in terms of strength or status. Many human Empyreans have also arrived. It seems they want to struggle for the support of the demon and monster races before their grand calamity truly arrives. The good fortune saint's son rubbed his chin, a diabolical smile crossing his face. This is also fun. During the monster emperor's longevity feast, I will have them all thoroughly lose heart. I will have the demon and monster races clearly demonstrate their alliances and crush all the fantasies that those old geezers of humanity have. At this time, the doors of the grand hall were pushed open and a charming voice sounded out. Ho ho ho! Holy Son, Your Highness, if you wish to complete such a matter, it isn't difficult at all. Behind the good fortune saint's son, a young girl wearing a rainbow-colored robe of feathers entered the room with a smile. That old man from the monster race already favors us. As for Empyrean Demon Dawn, he has no strong opinion on the matter. His only worries are that the little granddaughter of his will not be obedient and agree to the marriage. But with Your Highness Holy Son's methods, isn't dealing with a little girl that's just 100 years old an incredibly easy matter? The rainbow-clothed young girl said, her expression and voice full of jealousy that the good fortune saint's son was about to conquer yet another woman. The good fortune saint's son laughed. This Xiao Morxian has quite the character. She won't be easy to win over, but only women with character are worthy of conquering. Ha ha ha. As the good fortune saint's son spoke, he wrapped his hand around the rainbow-clothed young girl's snake-like waist and pulled her into the opulent chair beneath him. For the monster emperor's grand longevity feast, heroes and rivals were gathered together. It wasn't just Empyrean Demon Dawn and Empyrean Divine Dream, but soon after, Empyrean Vast Universe, Dark Demon Monarch, and other such great figures of the human race began to arrive one after another at the core of the monster race. With so many grand figures, it was impossible for the monster emperor to greet them all. He could only send high-level figures to meet them and arrange them separately. However, for an important guest like Empyrean Demon Dawn, the monster emperor went to personally greet him. At this time, within heaven-lifting Black Pagoda, monster concubine Arches was already leading Empyrean Demon Dawn, Xiao Morxian, and their subordinates to the main hall of the Black Pagoda. And in this main hall there was a 1,000-foot-long table made from pure white jade. Set out on top of the table were all sorts of spirit foods that had an astronomical price. If a mortal ate these spirit foods, they would live for several hundred years more, and if a martial artist were to partake in this food, their body would grow strong and healthy and their inner world would be nourished. It was extremely beneficial. Brother Demon Dawn, haha, I haven't seen you for such a long time. The Monster Emperor had a close and tight relationship with Empyrean Demon Dawn. As Empyrean Demon Dawn passed through the doors, the Monster Emperor quickly strode forwards to greet him. It's only been 20 years. This time, I went into seclusion for just 20 years and came out especially for my silly brother's longevity feast. Empyrean Demon Dawn chuckled in return. Like this, the two of them sat across from each other in the seats of honor. As for Xiao Moxian and monster concubine Arc-Hess, they sat down according to their status. During the reception, after the Monster Emperor exchanged 3 cups of wine with Empyrean Demon Dawn, his attention inevitably shifted onto Xiao Moxian. Xiao Moxian was the proudest daughter of heaven from Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace. Looking at the entire monster race and demon race, there had been no juniors who could compare with her martial talent for the last billion years. Moreover, she was closely related to the monster race and demon race, as well as being the key reason for the alliance between the two races. It was natural that the Monster Emperor would pay close attention to Xiao Moxian's growth. Now that Xiao Moxian had returned from the Azura Road, by all rights he should ask her some questions. Xiana, this time in the Azura Road, what harvests have you had? Come and tell us all. Your cultivation has risen quite rapidly. Xiao Moxian's cultivation speed was number 1 within the entire divine realm. At 26 years of age she had broken through the middle divine sea realm. Even the Lin Ming from that time was left in the dust by her. Now that Xiao Moxian had reached the late divine lord realm, she was just half a step from becoming a holy lord. This cultivation was certainly high. But what was strange was that everyone could faintly feel that Xiao Moxian's aura wasn't as strong as they thought it would be. In fact, it could even be considered a little small and weak. This surprised the Monster Emperor. In his experience, this sort of situation in truth meant that Xiao Moxian's combat strength wasn't formidable at all. For a peerless genius, their combat strength amongst others of their realm was far, far more important than their cultivation speed. If one's cultivation was low but they could jump ranks to fight, this indicated that they had tremendous potential. But if one's cultivation was high and their strength was only on par with those of their realm, that was a sign they would only be able to cultivate for another realm or two before exhausting all their potential. As the Monster Emperor looked over Xiao Moxian's situation, it seemed a bit similar to the second possibility. This left the Monster Emperor worried. Some geniuses had amazing potential when they were young. But slowly, as they grew, their potential would exhaust itself. This was not good news at all. This was why after being asked such a question by the Monster Emperor, Xiao Moxian tensed up. She had been using all of her strength to suppress the pure yang energy within her and also to maintain the appearance of her primordial yin energy so that the supreme elders present wouldn't discover the changes within her. Xiao Moxian suppressed her racing heart and forcefully spoke out with a calm tone, "Your Majesty, Monster Emperor flatters Xiana too much. My talent is low and I haven't had many fortuitous encounters in the Azura Road these past years. I simply cultivated in an orderly manner and managed to obtain several stalks of immortal grass so that my cultivation speed rose by a great deal. However, in truth, I'm afraid that my strength hasn't increased by much. If I had to say, then I must admit that I have wasted away my time in these past years. I have failed the hopes of your Majesty and am deeply ashamed." Xiao Moxian concealed the heaven-shaking fortuitous encounters she experienced in the Azura Road. This was because with her pregnancy, her strength had sharply fallen. In addition, she also had to suppress the pure yang energy within herself, making it so that she could only summon a pitiful amount of power. Whether it was how her condition looked from the outside, or how her situation really was, the truth was that in the end Xiao Moxian's strength was lacking right now. In this situation, if Xiao Moxian were to speak about the fortuitous encounters she experienced in Tragic Death Valley or the final trial, she simply wouldn't be able to explain it. If she had so many fortuitous encounters, how could she be so weak? Thus, She could only say that she had wasted away her time cultivating in the Azura Road. Hearing Xiao Moxian's words, Empyrean Demon Dawn felt a little awkward. No matter how it was said, Xiao Moxian was his granddaughter and was also closely related to Demon Dawn Heavenly Palace. As for the monster race, Xiao Moxian could only be considered a granddaughter to them from her mother's side, and their relations were a bit further apart. If Xiao Moxian's performance in the Azura Road wasn't wonderful at all, and not only did she not increase her potential but instead wasted her talent, Empyrean Demon Dawn would naturally feel ashamed. Haha, Xiana is too modest. The rise in your cultivation alone is already extraordinary. Looking at the entire divine realm, who could compare with Xiana's cultivation at such a young age? As for those several stalks of immortal grass, they should be on the level of transcendent divine medicines, right? In terms of combat strength, Xiana should also be able to contend with a peak Holy Lord martial artist. The Monster Emperor slowly said as he placed down the copper cup in his hand. According to common sense, if a martial artist at the late divine realm, close to a half-step Holy Lord, was able to jump up a boundary and fight with a peak Holy Lord, this martial artist would be considered a shockingly rare talent. But for a monstrous genius like Xiao Moxian who couldn't be explained by common sense, such an achievement wasn't anything at all. Rather, one could say these expectations were quite low. In the Monster Emperor's eyes, Xiao Moxian should be able to barely contend with a weak world king. Only then would this match her previous performances. Chapter 1751, Distress. Chapter 1751, Distress. Facing the Monster Emperor's questions, Xiao Moxian felt a pained bitterness. In her weakened state, she might not even be able to deal with a peak Holy Lord. And if she really couldn't deal with a peak Holy Lord, the matter of her grandfather losing face would only be a minor consequence. What she worried about was that someone would think there was something strange going on with her and decide to inspect her inner world for problems. If that happened, everything would be over. But at this time, a high yet harsh voice echoed out, dripping with unfriendliness, "I think that your majesty is too generous with Miss Xiana. Let alone a peak Holy Lord, I'm afraid she will find it difficult to deal with a late Holy Lord martial artist. For Miss Xiana to go to the Azura Road this time, perhaps it really must have been a mistake. Or, maybe Miss Xiana has exhausted all of her potential. If so, then even if she didn't go to the Azura Road, I fear nothing would have changed." When these words were spoken, the entire welcoming reception fell into utter silence. Everyone looked towards the origin of the voice. The one speaking was Monster Concubine Arc-Hess. At this time, Monster Concubine Arc-Hess had just finished eating a beautiful spirit fruit and was using a handkerchief of divine silk to wipe her cherry-red lips. Her movements were careful and delicate, like she was rubbing an exquisite jade sculpture. Such a scene was originally filled with an aesthetic sense, but when combined with the words she had just spoken, it caused the previously slightly embarrassed Empyrean Demon Dawn's complexion to darken. Even if Xiao Moxian's potential had indeed been exhausted, no one was allowed to speak of it. "Concubine Arc-Hess, what are you trying to do?" Empyrean Demon Dawn's voice was ice cold. He had always been an aggressive individual and was very fond of Xiao Moxian, doting on her a great deal. So how could he allow his own granddaughter to be insulted like this? According to what Concubine Arc-Hess says, Xiana isn't amazing at all. Then let me ask you, in your Hydra clan, are there any juniors in Xiana's realm that can compete with her? If there are, then bring them out to fight. Empyrean Demon Dawn's words were forceful and menacing. As he said them, Xiao Moxian felt her heart tighten. She didn't think that the situation would devolve to such a scene. If she really did have to fight, then that would undoubtedly be extremely bad. This monster concubine Arc-Hess, just what had she done to offend her? A woman with such a status shouldn't be trying to needle her at every possible moment during such a grand event. Even the Monster Emperor faintly frowned. He shouted, "Concubine Arc-Hess, just what kind of words are you saying? Even for an unrivaled genius, there will always be periods where they lag behind, but none of that matters as long as they can continue to display magnificent results in the future. Moreover, even if Xiana does lag beyond, she still far surpasses all other geniuses of her age. It's only that the expectations we've placed on her are far too heavy. The monster emperor's words could be called returning a bit of face to Xiao Moxian and Empyrean demon Dawn. But monster concubine Hess didn't seem to appreciate this kindness. It was like she had taken the wrong medicine today, causing every single one of her words to be filled with explosive provocation. She faintly smiled and continued to say, "Your Majesty, the monster emperor need not take offense. This concubine was simply carelessly speaking. Throughout the endless ages there have been many talents who have lagged behind for a small period of time but maintained their glorious rise afterwards. But there have also been many geniuses who have failed afterwards, their potential being completely exhausted and vanishing from sight. What Empyrean Demon Dawn said is true, there is no genius in my clan that can compete with Miss Yana. Indeed, in the past, there was one such genius who could. He went to the Azura Road together with Miss Yana and afterwards he didn't return. Even the life-soul jade slip he kept in the clan had been shattered." Monster concubine Archis' words were cold and critical. Upon hearing them, Xiao Moxian froze. She finally realized just why monster concubine Hess had been targeting her at every opportunity. So it was because of this, the genius of the monster race that they had sent to accompany her to the Azura Road, Monster Prince Juyu, had come from the same clan as monster concubine Hess. That's right, Monster Prince Juyu was from the Hydra clan. Xiao Moxian thought, her heart bitter. At God-Burying Ridge, Monster Prince Juyu hadn't liked Lin Ming at all. When Lin Ming was being chased by Mr. Ju, Imperial Prince Naki, and the others, Monster Prince Juyu was afraid that he would be sucked into his mess and thus he had suggested that their group rid themselves of Lin Ming, and then he and Xiao Moxian could follow the group and leave. This was also because he was hoping that Mr. Ju would find and kill Lin Ming. But then Xiao Moxian had stubbornly stuck together with Lin Ming, causing Monster Prince Juyu's plan to fail. After that, Xiao Moxian was forced into tragic Death Valley with Lin Ming and had not heard any news of Monster Prince Juyu since. In fact, she had nearly forgotten about him. Now that she heard concubine Archis' words, it was clear that Monster Prince Juyu had died in the Azura Road, and he had likely been killed at God-Burying Ridge. In Xiao Moxian's heart, this Monster Prince Juyu was an unimportant character. But to the monster race, he was indeed a genius, especially to concubine Archis' Hydra clan. He had been a direct descendant. Amongst the younger generation of the Hydra clan, Monster Prince Juyu had been the most outstanding junior there was. But he had died in the Azura Road. How could monster concubine Hess not be sad about this? How could she not be angry? Hearing monster concubine Hess mention Monster Prince Juyu once more, the monster emperor's complexion darkened. "Concubine Hess, are you trying to put the blame of Juyu's death atop of Xiana? As the head of the harem, how could you not understand the simple truths of the world? The Azura Road smelting trial is originally filled with perilous risks, and life and death are both decided by one's destiny. If Juyu died in the Azura Road, then the only one that can be blamed is him for lacking in destiny. It had nothing to do with Xiana. Do you think that Juyu was killed by Xiana? Ho 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 ho. You are asking what responsibility she has. Don't you know that Xiao Moxian is nothing but a little witch that loves to draw disasters upon herself?" As soon as she arrived at the Azura Road, she provoked a city lord, causing the city lord to fight Old Blue, the guardian that the monster and demon races sent to protect Xiao Moxian and Juyu. In the end, both of them were wounded. At this time, according to Juyu's original intentions, he should have returned to the divine realm. If he came back, then there wouldn't have been any problem at all. But what did Xiao Moxian do? She took advantage of the time when Old Blue was closed up in seclusion recovering from his wounds and ran away. After that, because Juyu was worried she would encounter some accident, he went to find her and finally tracked her down after a great deal of hardship. But even after suffering so much to find her, she didn't listen to Juyu's advice at all and refused to return. Finally, because Juyu was concerned for her safety, he followed her and ended up dying. After that, Xiao Moxian actually managed to come back safely all by herself. If she had some amazing accomplishments, then I would have nothing to say, but what did she do in those dozens of years at the Azura Road? Is she strong? Her cultivation is high, but her foundation is absolute garbage. The more monster concubine Hess spoke, the more zealous and vehement her words became. Her eyes were like knives as she glared at Xiao Moxian. Xiao Moxian paled. Concubine Arc-Hess, the matter is not as simple as you think. I never asked Juyu to follow me. When Xiao Moxian went to the Azura Road, she had indeed stirred up a city lord. But that wasn't because she had provoked him on purpose, but because her results in the smelting trial were too outstanding and the rare reward she obtained was coveted by the city lord. Following that, Xiao Moxian had indeed shown her wild side and refused to return to the divine realm. But while Monster Prince Juyu did follow her, it wasn't because he was worried about her safety but because he had other plans. Monster Prince Juyu wanted to obtain Xiao Moxian. However, Xiao Moxian had already long been annoyed by him. Yet no matter how much she tried, she couldn't get rid of his nagging presence. Of course, Monster Concubine Arc-Hess absolutely wouldn't listen to any of this. Ho ho ho. Did you all hear that? She didn't want Juyu to follow her. It was only that Juyu was worried for her safety and tried to help her. To think a dog you feed with such painstaking care would bite you in return. The more Monster Concubine Arc-Hess spoke, the coarser and ruder her words become. Empyrean Demon Dawn suddenly humphed coldly. As he did, a terrifying energy fluctuation spread out, causing all of the platters and dishes on the table to jump up. Enough. For a time, everyone calmed down. Empyrean Demon Dawn's eyes burned as he looked at Monster Concubine Arc-Hess. His voice was as cold as the winters of the 9 nether hells. I don't know what happened, nor do I care. I also do not care to listen to your explanation or Xianus. I will only ask you one thing. Just what are you trying to do? As a top Empyrean, within the entire divine realm, Empyrean Demon Dawn was only inferior to a handful of people. Once his anger was aroused, his momentum could stir up stormy seas and monstrous waves. In the entire main hall, all of the martial artists were covered underneath this horrifying pressure, all of them gasping for breath. As for Monster Concubine Arc-Hess, she bore the brunt of this pressure. Even though she was a half-step Empyrean, she still found the aura difficult to withstand. And this was with Empyrean Demon Dawn suppressing his aura. If he fully released his aura, it would be a dream for Monster Concubine Arc-Hess to continue sitting where she was. But this Monster Concubine Arc-Hess was also a ruthless and vicious character. In the harem that was filled with blood-drenched competition, she had managed to climb up to the top. She was an inherently aggressive character, and even facing Empyrean Demon Dawn's pressure she didn't flinch at all. Instead, she coldly said, I want Xiao Moxian to meet my palm. I will suppress the strength within my palm to that of a peak holy lord. Didn't His Majesty say that Xiao Moxian could contend with a peak holy lord martial artist? Then, for her to meet my palm won't be difficult at all. After this palm I will no longer investigate this matter. No matter what achievements Xiao Moxian has, no matter what her status is in the future, even if she becomes the ruler of the monster race, that will have nothing to do with me. Although Monster Concubine Arch's latter words seemed free and daring, the truth was that it was all a show. This was because the Monster Emperor still had an extremely long life ahead of him. Although Monster Concubine Arc-Hess was much younger than the Monster Emperor, her cultivation was inferior to his and it was hopeless for her to break into the Empyrean realm in the future. She would never outlive the Monster Emperor. And let alone Xiao Moxian ruling the monster race, even if she did, Monster Concubine Arc-Hess would have already died of old age by then. She simply didn't need to fear Xiao Moxian at all. A palm strike from a peak holy lord. Empyrean Demon Dawn coldly smiled. He looked at Xiao Moxian. Xiana, meet her palm. Empyrean Demon Dawn's voice did not brook any disobedience. He believed that it was impossible for Xiao Moxian to be unable to block Imperial Concubine Arch's strike when she had suppressed her cultivation. Drawing back 10,000 steps, even if Xiao Moxian's strength was lacking and she was wounded to the point she spat blood, that would only be losing a bit of face, there would be no harm to her life. As for any hidden wounds left behind, with Xiao Moxian's unique physique she could quickly recover. Grandfather, Xiao Moxian felt bitter over the situation. In her peak state, let alone the strike of someone that had suppressed their strength to that of a peak holy lord, if she tried her best she could even withstand a strike from a great world king. But currently, she was pregnant, it was impossible for her to transfer too much strength. Millimeter? Hearing Xiao Moxian's timid tone, Empyrean Demandorn's complexion became cold and gloomy. He always spoke in a strong manner and no one dared to refuse his orders. In such a scene, how could he possibly allow his momentum to be weakened? Chapter 1752, Poison. Chapter 1752, Poison. The strike of a peak holy lord, you won't even meet it. Empyrean Demandorn's tiger-bright eyes looked at Xiao Moxian, a burning anger growing within them. In his impression, Xiao Moxian was someone that didn't fear the heavens or earth. Her character was just like Empyrean Demandorn's when he was young, thus Empyrean Demandorn was extremely affectionate towards her. Not only did his granddaughter possess a top-ranked talent in the divine realm, he also approved of her disposition and way of living. But today, Empyrean Demandorn would never have imagined that facing the arrogant taunting of monster concubine Arches, Xiao Moxian would endure her insult. This caused Empyrean Demandorn to feel as if he had lost all face. Xiao Moxian hadn't made much progress in the Azura Road, and whether it was because of destiny or her potential was lacking, that wasn't something she could control. But now, she didn't dare to face a palm from monster concubine Arches. This was a matter of her courage. As a top talent of the divine realm, the late divine lord Xiao Moxian didn't even dare to meet the palm of a peak holy lord. This caused anger to surge in Empyrean Demandorn's heart. He struggled to contain it. Ho ho ho! Xiao Moxian, if you don't dare to meet my palm, then you can apologize to my clan and also mourn for Juyu for 1 year. After that, I will consider the matter finished and won't pursue it any longer. After hearing monster concubine Arches' words, Empyrean Demandorn was on the verge of violently storming out. He looked at Xiao Moxian, the anger in his eyes brewing like a volcano ready to explode. Xiao Moxian's face paled. The corners of her lips twitched. She took a deep breath and said, "Fine, then I will meet your palm." It wasn't that she feared Empyrean Demandorn's anger, but that she couldn't observe mourning for monster Prince Juyu. The so-called observing mourning for 1 year meant that within this year, one couldn't drink, have sex, or have any other forms of entertainment, all in order to express one's sorrow and grieving. To Xiao Moxian this wasn't difficult at all, she could easily go into seclusion for a year. But to observe mourning, that was something only done by children for their parents or a wife for her husband. If Xiao Moxian were to observe mourning for monster Prince Juyu, the reason would not be because of the former, but because of the latter. This was an impossible choice for her. As monster concubine Arches spoke, even the monster emperor frowned. He felt that monster concubine Arches had stepped over the line. Empyrean Demandorn coldly snorted. His expression calmed down as he slowly sat back in his seat. In the great hall, monster concubine Arches created a force field, isolating the space within. Within this space, there was only her and Xiao Moxian. Facing Xiao Moxian, monster concubine Arches jeered with hatred. "You killed Juyu and all I need is for you to meet my palm. How easy for you." As monster concubine Arches spoke, she stretched out her slender right hand. With a crackling sound, scales began to form over her skin and her fingertips turned into sharp nails. For a time, the origin energy around monster concubine Arches started to wildly gather about her. Xiao Moxian didn't say a word, simply quietly withstanding monster concubine Arches' pressure. At this time, monster concubine Arches had already suppressed her energy to that of a peak holy lord. Concerning this, monster concubine Arches didn't play any tricks, otherwise Empyrean Demandorn would stop her. After 4 or 5 breaths of time, monster concubine Arches suddenly moved. Behind her, a massive black phantom appeared. This black phantom was a hydra. Monster concubine had activated the power of the hydra bloodline within her. A potent poison gas, thick with the power of darkness, erupted from within monster concubine Arches. These strengths had reached an extremely high boundary of laws, far surpassing those of a holy lord. Although monster concubine Arches had suppressed her cultivation to that of a peak holy lord, she hadn't limited her skill in laws or any other aspects. With a peak holy lord cultivation and activating the strength of her hydra bloodline as well as using the limits of her laws, the power of this strike was equal to that of an ordinary world king. In particular, that poisonous power was especially horrifying. The concept of poison was an extremely bizarre and unconventional concept for martial artists to learn. When a mortal used poison, it was often refined from some poisonous plants, insects, snakes, or other such creatures. For a high-level martial artist, the poisons they used were refined from poisonous heavenly materials or taken from the corpses of dangerous poisonous creatures. The toxicity of these things could not be compared to common poisons. And a step above that, when one reached monster concubine Archis boundary and their concept of poison reached large success, the poison would no longer be a material thing, but a type of energy. Once she started using her poison-type cultivation method, the surrounding heaven and earth origin energy would transform into an incredibly poisonous and corrosive energy. An Empyrean poison master could even turn an entire world into a world of poison energy, making the whole world a death trap. In her battle against Xiao Moxian, monster concubine had used her poison laws. If she managed to wound Xiao Moxian, it would be easy for these poisons to remain in her body, continually causing damage. This was an extremely cruel and sinister move. Jixiana, let me see how you block my strike. Monster concubine Arches coldly sneered. The current Xiao Moxian had a messy foundation and her strength was a complete mess. For her to block this strike was nothing more than a dream, because the power behind it had already exceeded the limit of her strength. Xiao Moxian's thoughts focused. In truth, she had already expected that this monster concubine Arches who loathed her would not let her off so easily. But she never thought that monster concubine Arches would be ruthless enough to use such a dangerous poison technique. Xiao Moxian naturally didn't fear these poisons, but the embryo within her wouldn't be able to withstand them. Xiao Moxian would not allow her unborn child to be harmed, not even in the slightest. Xiao Moxian was in a critically bad situation. Not only did she have to conceal all the secrets within her body, but she also had to block this strike. It was simply impossible. She grit her teeth. Then, endless pure black flames wildly rolled up from all directions, billowing towards Xiao Moxian. At the same time, the phantom of a dark phoenix manifested behind Xiao Moxian. This dark phoenix was incomparably clear, each feather revealing the most minute texture and detail. The moment that the dark phoenix appeared, the limitless black flames became far more terrifying. These flames seemed to contain a wild and uncontrollable momentum of the great Tao that could burn down the world, one that originated from the most ancient of times. These roaring flames came from the spirit of the undying inferno that she defeated at the Azura Road's final trial. The tumultuous flames were swallowed up within Xiao Moxian. The nirvanic flames within her had already added in the might of the Azura heavenly Tao. This mysterious and ancient strength surpassed the knowledge of everyone present. Even the many other world kings and half-step Empyreans present widened their eyes as they saw these black flames, their hearts shaking. These flames, how is this possible? The monster emperor had originally been leaning back in his seat. As he saw these flames appear, his entire body tensed and he sat up straight. No matter how one saw it, it seemed that Xiao Moxian was sick and her strength was weak. But no one would have imagined that when facing monster concubine Arches, the aura of flames around her body would actually explode to such terrifying height. This is... Empyrean Demandorn's eyes blazed brightly. The flames that Xiao Moxian released were in truth not that strong, but the law concepts were extremely high. She had already steadily entered into the 7th level concept of the fire laws. To possess a higher boundary in the laws was another matter. As long as one's talent was high enough and with the accumulation of time, then even a peak fire attribute Great World King would be able to steadily enter the 7th level concept of the fire laws. But what surprised Empyrean Demon Dawn the most was that the quality of these flames had reached an inconceivable degree. Different flames had different qualities. The lowest rank was fire used by mortals. Then, going up rank after rank, Xiao Moxian's nirvanic flames were nearly the highest rank flames possible. Yet now, the flames that Xiao Moxian displayed seemed to have used the nirvanic flames as a foundation and gone a level further. An incomprehensible strength had fused together with the nirvanic flames, adding on a finishing touch. Empyrean Demon Dawn originally thought that Xiao Moxian had wasted away her time cultivating in the Azura Road, but now it seemed that things weren't as simple as they appear. Perhaps she can really block it. Even the normally calm and dignified Empyrean demon Dawn was excited when it came to the future growth of his granddaughter. His heart tightened. So what if the quality of your flames is high? You are still weak. Monster concubine Arches struck out with her palm. Besides suppressing her cultivation, she had pushed all other aspects to their limit. Kai kai kai. A dreadful darkness and power of poison erupted outwards. Even space itself was melted by this poison. Xiao Moxian was surrounded by the poison energy. As long as this poison energy gathered, even a top spirit artifact would be corroded to slag. A normal martial artist would be melted away without even their bones remaining. As everyone was expecting Xiao Moxian to use her fire laws that contained a strange strength to burn away the poison energy, what actually happened left them all startled. Xiao Moxian didn't explode with her nirvanic flames. Rather, she used the nirvanic flames to protect her body and forcefully withstand monster concubine Arch's strike. Millimeter. Empyrean demon Dawn frowned. This sort of combat method was simply the same as passively sitting there and being smacked around. Why didn't she counterattack? Even if Xiao Moxian wasn't strong enough, even if her counterattack would definitely fail and even result in her being injured, she still shouldn't weaken her momentum and allow others to bully her. Kai kai kai. The radiant nirvanic flames turned most of the clouds of poison energy into nothing. After fusing with the Azura Heavenly Tao, Xiao Moxian's nirvanic flames were now of an extremely high quality. However, she could only move a limited amount of strength. One reason was because the embryo within her possessed the bloodlines of a dragon and phoenix, and had also inherited the power of the Azura blood, thus it was absorbing too much energy from her. And a second reason was that she had to use a great deal of her strength to conceal the pure yang energy within her and maintain the semblance of her primordial yin energy. In this situation, how could Xiao Moxian withstand monster concubine's poisonous strike which utilized the laws of a half-step Empyrean? The black nirvanic flames were slowly weakened by the endless poison energy. In that moment, Xiao Moxian's protective true essence was also slowly being corroded by the poison energy. Kai kai kai. After the poison energy corroded Xiao Moxian's protective true essence, it began to invade her meridians and blood vessels, even corroding her blood. Strands of black energy began to multiply within her blood. Even her marrow was contained by this poison energy. It was as if drops of acid were being injected into her, extremely agonizing. However, Xiao Moxian grit her teeth. All the energy she could summon was quietly transferred to her inner world, protecting the unborn life within her. Chapter 1753. Who is he? Chapter 1753. Who is he? Xiao Moxian's entire body was being corroded by poison energy. The agonizing pain of her blood being burned by poison was beyond description. This sort of pain was the same as having concentrated acid mixed into her blood, as if her marrow was crackling like heated oil. She gripped her fists, withstanding the waves of pain. All of her remaining essence was used to protect her inner world. With things having come this far, she could only quietly continue in hopes that she wouldn't be discovered. Otherwise, the matter of her pregnancy would become known. Black blood began to drip from the sides of Xiao Moxian's lips. As this black blood flowed out, Xiao Moxian's heart skipped a beat and her complexion changed. The baby in her stomach was connected to her own bloodline. If her blood was corroded by the poison to the point of turning black, no matter how much energy she summoned, she would not be able to cut off the streams of black blood from entering the baby within her. The fetus was at its earliest developmental stage. Xiao Moxian absolutely could not allow it to be affected. Ignoring the violent poison energy all around her, she forcefully revolved the nirvanic flames within her body and had the terrifying burning heat flood her blood vessels, crazily burning away the poison energy. For a time, Xiao Moxian's body became a battlefield. The poison energy intensely fought with the nirvanic flames. The pressure on Xiao Moxian's mortal body could be imagined. Even though she had a half-god beast body, withstanding such pressure still caused her blood vessels to explode and blood to shoot out. Monster concubine Arches grinned as she saw this. She could faintly feel that Xiao Moxian wouldn't be able to last much longer. Just as she was about to put forth more energy, A furious voice slammed into her ears like a thunderclap. "Fuck off." With an explosive sound, monster concubine Archess felt a tyrannical and fierce strength rush into her body, causing her to violently shake and directly smashing her away. Peng! Monster concubine Archess was blown away and sent crashing into the table. Countless glazed dishes and bowls were shattered and her entire body was drenched in the dregs of spirit foods and spirit drinks, making her look extremely miserable. Seeing this, the monster emperor thought of moving. But in the end he didn't. He let out a long breath. He never thought that today's welcoming reception would have such a scene. In a pile of debris, monster concubine Archess propped herself up on her arms, gnashing her teeth as she looked at Empyrean Demon Dawn. Facing the angry and mighty Empyrean Demon Dawn, it was impossible to say she wasn't afraid. The savage battles of the demon and monster races were far more barbaric than those of the humans. If the races of the divine realm were compared to those of the mortal world, then the monster and demon races were comparable to primitive nomadic tribes and barbarians. For a battle to suddenly occur at a banquet wasn't strange at all. Even if Empyrean Demon Dawn were to heavily wound monster concubine Archess, that would also be a likely possibility. One move has already passed. Empyrean Demon Dawn's voice held a faint trace of killing intent. Monster concubine Archess stood up from the mess, circulating the energy within her and using the power of darkness to clean away the food that stained her. Soon, her clothes seemed as if they were completely new. As for Xian Morxian, her face was still wan. A great deal of monster concubine Archess poison was still in her body. Empyrean Demon Dawn looked at Xiao Morxian and suddenly walked over to her. "Grandfather." Xiao Morxian held her breath. The poison that monster concubine Archess left behind within her wasn't fatal at all. Resting for a day would have been more than enough to completely recover. But now that she was pregnant, everything had become far more complicated. If Empyrean Demon Dawn helped, then he could certainly rid her body of all of the poison instantly. But there was a 100% likelihood that the secret of her pregnancy would be discovered. When Empyrean Demon Dawn was 100 feet away from her, Xiao Morxian subconsciously stepped back. Her heart had caught in her throat. She was unable to find any excuses to refuse her grandfather's help. At this time, Empyrean Demon Dawn had already reached out a hand towards her. "Xiana, what are you hiding from me?" Empyrean Demon Dawn's voice was filled with fury. He had already felt that something was wrong, but he just didn't truly suspect Xiao Morxian. However, when he saw Xiao Morxian use her nirvanic flames as well as her strange actions that didn't conform to her normal behavior, he had confirmed that she was hiding something. "In the Azura Road, just what happened to you?" Empyrean Demon Dawn grabbed onto Xiao Morxian's arm. Xiao Morxian's heart shrank. Suddenly, she felt it nearly impossible to breathe. It was no longer possible to hide the truth. She was like a puppet, directly held by Empyrean Demon Dawn. As Empyrean Demon Dawn's energy rushed into her blood vessels, Xiao Morxian felt the world slow down to a crawl. All sight and sound seemed to fall away. Kai kai kai. A black vortex appeared in Empyrean Demon Dawn's palm. In just a moment, all of the poison within Xiao Morxian was swallowed up by the black vortex. This was Empyrean Demon Dawn's heaven-absorbing demon art. The poison was eliminated and the agonizing pain in her body also disappeared. But compared to the suffering in her heart, that physical pain hadn't been anything at all. Time passed, one breath of time after one breath of time. To Xiao Morxian, every breath of time was as long as a year. She didn't dare to look at Empyrean Demon Dawn's face. She didn't even dare to breathe. As for Empyrean Demon Dawn, he remained completely quiet. As he grabbed Xiao Morxian's arm, a long period of silence passed. Rivulets of sweat dripped down Xiao Morxian's back and forehead. She felt as if she could collapse at any moment. "Brother Demon Dawn." At this time, the monster emperor finally spoke up. Before, he had already been suspicious about Xiao Morxian's bodily state. He felt that her primordial yin energy wasn't as steady as it should be, and her energy was in utter chaos. But when he considered that it might be because Xiao Morxian didn't consolidate her foundation in the Azura Road, the monster emperor didn't care too much about this matter. But then, in the battle just now, he saw Empyrean Demon Dawn's expression. The monster emperor seemed to faintly realize what happened. "All of you, leave." The monster emperor waved his hand and the monster race martial artists began to file out. They never imagined that things would develop to such a degree. When monster concubine Arches and Xiao Moxian had begun to fight, all of them had fallen silent, none of them daring to utter a single word. Whether it was Xiao Moxian or monster concubine Arches, they both had a status far above their own. "You also leave." The monster emperor looked at monster concubine Arches. Monster concubine Arches clenched her teeth and silently withdrew. Before she left, she cast a deep look towards Xiao Moxian. She had already faintly guessed what might have happened. Monster concubine Arches possessed a half-step Empyrean cultivation, and in the monster race her status was only inferior to that of the monster empress and several great god beasts. She carefully observed Xiao Moxian and had discovered several questionable points. After a time, in the entire hall, there was only Empyrean Demon Dawn, the monster emperor, and Xiao Moxian left. "Tell me, who is he?" After remaining silent for a long time, Empyrean Demon Dawn finally spoke up. At this time, he was like a furious lion. Xiao Moxian trembled. She looked up towards her grandfather. Empyrean Demon Dawn's eyes had turned blood red as if they could swallow her alive. Xiao Moxian bit her lips and remained silent. "Good. You don't want to tell me, fine. Then I'll just refine the bastard in your womb. In any case, a bastard of unknown origin is the shame of my demon race." As Empyrean Demon Dawn spoke, he lifted his left hand. A brilliant black vortex appeared in his palm. This vortex was his heaven-absorbing demon art. As long as this black vortex was thrust into Xiao Moxian's stomach, whether it was the baby's forming soul, its flesh and blood, or its energy, all of it would be devoured without a single speck remaining. Seeing Empyrean Demon Dawn raise his hand, Xiao Moxian closed her eyes and decisively said, "Grandfather, if you will do that, then kill me as well. If I cannot protect my child, then I do not wish to live in this world any longer." Xiao Moxian's voice was resolute. The monster emperor's heart skipped a beat. He was well aware that with Xiao Moxian's character, she would stay true to her words. If Empyrean Demon Dawn really did as he threatened, then Xiao Moxian would instantly commit suicide. "Brother Demon Dawn, calm down." The monster emperor quickly spoke out. He could feel that this time, Empyrean Demon Dawn was truly angered. In the past, no matter what Xiao Moxian did, Empyrean Demon Dawn would always accommodate her. No matter what trouble she stirred up, no matter who she provoked, he would always play damage control and deal with the aftermath. But this time, she had touched upon his bottom line. The monster emperor feared that in his violent rage, Empyrean Demon Dawn would do something he could not take back. If anything happened to Xiao Moxian, it would be a tremendous loss to the monster and demon races. Even the baby in Xiao Moxian's womb needed further consideration. It had to be known that it was extremely difficult for a god beast to become pregnant, especially for someone like Xiao Moxian. Once they had a child, after that child grew up, they would definitely become an amazingly outstanding individual. To rashly kill such a child was too great a pity. "You want to threaten me with your death?" Empyrean Demon Dawn's complexion turned cold and grim. "In the divine realm, no one can threaten me, not even you. Do you not believe I don't have 100 methods to make it impossible for you to commit suicide?" Empyrean Demon Dawn's voice was ferocious. But Xiao Moxian was also a stubborn and proud character. She clenched her teeth and said, "Even if you have 100 methods to lock in my energy so that I cannot kill myself, it is impossible for you to continue that for the rest of my life. As long as that spell is undone, then I will instantly abandon my meridians and die." Facing Empyrean Demon Dawn, who was roiling with killing intent, no one dared to speak to him like that. Even monster concubine Arches, whose status was in the top 10 of the monster race, didn't dare to say a single word when she was struck to the point of spitting out blood in the face of everyone. It was because when facing the enraged Empyrean Demon Dawn, the pressure was simply too great. No one knew for sure whether or not he would instantly strike to kill at any moment. Hey, good. You truly are my good granddaughter. Is that little animal really worth you protecting him?" That you would threaten me with your own death. Do you think that just because you don't say anything, I won't know? The bloodline of the bastard within you has the aura of a true dragon as well as the aura of a human. When you went to the Azura Road, Divine Dream Heavenly Palace's Lin Ming also went. Along with the aura of a true dragon and humanity, who else could it be but him? Chapter 1754, House Arrest. Chapter 1754, House Arrest. After Empyrean Demon Dawn suddenly mentioned Lin Ming's name, Xiao Moxian trembled and didn't speak again. Xiao Moxian hadn't thought that Empyrean Demon Dawn would know that the father of the child was Lin Ming. But, thinking about it more carefully, even if he did know, then there was nothing he could do. Lin Ming was someone related to humanity's great calamity, and it wouldn't even be an exaggeration to call him one of the hopes of humanity. In this case, how could Empyrean Divine Dream allow anything to happen to Lin Ming? Ruthless. Far too ruthless. So it really is him. Empyrean Demon Dawn's killing intent surged out in all directions. That little beast, even in the tempering grounds of the Azura Road, he still messes around in love affairs like a playboy and even went so far as to deceive my granddaughter. Empyrean Demon Dawn's voice shook with rage. At this time the Monster Emperor said, "This Lin Ming, he might have known that my monster race and the demon race were planning to ally with the saints and also knew that Xiana's marriage was the key to this. Thus, he decided to take advantage of the time he was in the Azura Road and trick Xiana of her chastity, ruining all our plans before they began. He even left behind a child within Xiana, making everything an absolute mess. This move of his is ruthless enough." Hearing the Monster Emperor say that all of this was a deliberate plot that Lin Ming had planned, Xiao Moxian was unable to remain silent. She looked towards the Monster Emperor and coldly said, "Monster Emperor, your majesty, you may blame me, but you cannot use such words to frame Lin Ming. Before this he didn't know that you planned to ally with the saints, nor did he trick me. Me being with him is also on my own initiative." "Shut up." The already enraged Empyrean Demon Dawn suddenly burst out. His fist punched towards Xiao Moxian's stomach. This sudden move caused Xiao Moxian's complexion to change. Even the Monster Emperor held his breath. "Demon Dawn, you..." The Monster Emperor was too late to stop Empyrean Demon Dawn. With a loud cracking sound, Xiao Moxian was sent flying away like a broken kite. She felt a terrifying strength pour into her inner world, rushing towards that tiny life within her. "Ah!" Xiao Moxian cried out in panic. A cold sweat ran through her. She thought that Empyrean Demon Dawn planned to kill her child. However, after falling to the ground, Xiao Moxian discovered she wasn't wounded in the least. Rather, she discovered that the power Empyrean Demon Dawn placed within her body had simply formed a group of black energy that locked down her inner world. As for the place the black energy locked down, it was where the fetus within her was. Xiao Moxian paled. "What did you do?" Empyrean Demon Dawn didn't respond. He flicked his fingers, pushing her acupoints and sealing away all her true essence. Then, Xiao Moxian felt sore and weak, as if she had reverted to being a mortal girl. "I do not like being led by the nose." The originally enraged Empyrean Demon Dawn's voice had calmed down. However, his calm voice still gave off an extremely oppressive feeling. "I have placed an energy lock within your stomach. With your cultivation, it is impossible for you to unravel it. With just a single thought from me, the energy lock will collapse and create an energy vortex of the heaven-absorbing demon art, killing the fetus in you. You might have thought that I wouldn't be able to bear destroying such a talented baby, and you are right, I truly cannot bear to do so. But compared to the survival of the monster race and demon race, compared to the future of our people, what can an unborn child be considered as?" The monster and demon races were in a precarious situation, caught in a raging storm all around them. Even if this baby was destined to become a true divinity in the future, this wasn't meaningful to them at all because it was a matter that might occur dozens of millions of years from now. And by that time, the monster and demon races might have been long annihilated in the Great Calamity. Moreover, no one could say whether or not the fetus within Xiao Moxian would be able to become a true divinity in the future. Now, What Empyrean Demon Dawn and the Monster Emperor had to consider first was how to preserve the existence of their monster and demon races. You want to use my child to threaten me? Xiao Moxian looked at Empyrean Demon Dawn, her voice trembling. Originally I didn't want to force you, but you have left me far too disappointed. Empyrean Demon Dawn's voice was deep and resonant. As he looked at Xiao Moxian, his eyes were filled with indisputable anger. You knew long ago that our demon and monster races planned to ally with the saints. Yet you disregarded the interests of your people and gave away your most precious thing to that little beast Lin Ming. Who gave you this right? Everything you have now, your bloodline, your body, all of it was bestowed upon you by the monster and demon races. Do you think that your most precious primordial yin energy belonged to you alone, that you could give it to whomever you pleased? One's body, their skin, their hair, all of it was granted to them by their parents. In the extremely traditional demon race, in the eyes of Empyrean Demon Dawn, Xiao Moxian's actions were no different from betraying them. Starting from this day forth, you cannot leave. I will seal away your strength. 10 days from now, at the longevity feast, the good fortune Saint Sun will publicly propose your marriage to me. I want you to agree to it. Otherwise, your child will not live on the 11th day. Empyrean Demon Dawn gloomily said. Xiao Moxian shivered as she heard this. That's right, at the longevity feast 10 days from now, Lin Ming will also be there. When you agree to the marriage proposal it will also be in front of him, so you had best prepare yourself to do so. And, after I seal away your strength it will be impossible for you to send Lin Ming a sound transmission. Whether you want your child or whether you want your so-called love, make your own choice. Empyrean Demon Dawn's words were knives that stabbed into Xiao Moxian, leaving her heart bleeding. Was there any crueler situation in the world? Her own grandfather was threatening her with the life of his unborn great-grandchild. To have her, in front of the person she loved the most, agree to marry someone she loathed above all. Moreover, she would have no chance to explain the situation to Lin Ming. She would cruelly hurt Lin Ming and then have to face his endless disappointment. Thinking of this, Xiao Moxian's heart shrank. As she looked at her own grandfather, she felt that his face had become unfamiliar to her. I will give you one final warning. You absolutely must not think that I cannot bear killing your child, so, do not disobey me anymore. From this day on, forget Lin Ming. As for your child, as long as you do not disobey me, I will do everything in my power to hide it from the saints until it can be born. But, the child will also have no relation to Lin Ming. As Empyrean Demon Dawn spoke, he turned and left. And behind Empyrean Demon Dawn, the Monster Emperor shook his head again and again. He said, Xiana, you are too naive, too pure, too young. I know that you hate your grandfather, but in the future you will come to know that everything he did was for your own good. If he were to allow you to do as you wished, then the alliance between our monster and demon races with the saints will break apart. In the upcoming great calamity, it is likely we will all perish. At that time, just what will you be considered as? Without the roots, just what will you do? Will you just follow Lin Ming around like a grieving dog? Do you know that you aren't even Lin Ming's official wife? Do you believe that Lin Ming will always share the same affection with you in the future? A man's vow is the same as dog shit. The so-called love is nonsense and sacrificing yourself for love is the height of stupidity. Moreover, if you decide to sacrifice yourself for love, you will also drag down the monster and demon races with you, placing my people, your people, in a perilous state. Knowing this, do you still wonder why your grandfather is so angry today? Even I am disappointed in you. Remember, in a world of martial artists, strength is all. What use is love? Can you eat it? Moreover, it's unknown whether or not that Lin Ming can live for much longer. He reached past his limits and agreed to a 100-year duel with the good fortune Saint Sun. At that time, even if he doesn't die, he will be beaten into a crippled state. Will you take revenge for him? Do you think he will still be able to take revenge for himself in the future? The saints will not give him the chance. Give up on him. When you become an Empyrean in the future, when you become a true divinity and the world is in your palm, you will understand just how naive you have been. As the Monster Emperor said this, he also turned and left. Soon, maids pushed open the doors and brought Xiao Moxian away. After passing through several winding corridors, Xiao Moxian was brought to an extremely luxurious room. There were rugs made of peacock feathers and the smell of incense made of heavenly materials wafted in the air. Even when eating meals or bathing, there were always 8 maids constantly supervising and helping her at all hours. However, there was a single point. After Xiao Moxian entered the room, she wasn't able to take even half a step out again. She had been placed under house arrest here in order to wait for the Monster Emperor's longevity feast 10 days from now. At that time, in front of Lin Ming, she would have to agree to the good fortune Saint Sun's proposal. And, what pained her most was that she wasn't able to tell Lin Ming her reasons for doing so. She couldn't even tell him of her pregnancy. And after the longevity feast and even after the child was born, it would have no relations with Lin Ming. He might not even know that he had a child. I have to, before the longevity feast begins, inform Lin Ming of the situation. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.